Fox. My name is Christy Matino if you are just joining us for this breaking news coverage. Before we dive right back into it, I did want to pull up this programming note. If you are joining us to watch the Rose Parade out of California, we did have a programming change due to this breaking news out of New Orleans. So what I am going to do right now is pull up this QR code on your screen. If you are here for the Rose Parade, you can scan that QR code. That's going to take you to our YouTube stream where we are playing that in full without commercial interruption, and you can watch it there if that is what you're here for. But again, we will not be airing this parade on the mainstream today due to this breaking news out of New Orleans. So once again, you can scan that QR code, but for right now, we are going to head back out to this breaking news. I did want to pull up one of the many live images that we are getting into our newsroom here, and this is where the Sugar Bowl set to take place tonight, and we actually do have reaction from the Sugar Bowl CEO that I am going to read you here very shortly. Again, the Sugar Bowl is this college football playoff game. It is still going to go on tonight as scheduled. However, there is going to be increased security, and that's per that press briefing that we heard just a few hours ago from law enforcement officials. Again, that game is going to be between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Georgia Bulldogs. Many people in town for that game, and right now what I do want to do is pull up the quote that we have, this statement from the Sugar Bowl CEO, and this is his response to this attack. This is from Jeff Hundley. He says, quote, "The Sugar Bowl committee is devastated by the terrible events from early this morning. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We are in ongoing discussions with authorities on the local, state, and federal levels, and will communicate further details as they do become available." Again, those details we're hoping to get at this press conference set to start here in just about 45 minutes. Did want to take you out to this other live look that we've been bringing you throughout the morning here of the scene on Bourbon Street. Again, all of this happening in New Orleans, Louisiana. If you are just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, what we know right now, 10 people killed, 35 injured after a man plowed his truck into a crowd of people this morning, all happening around 3:15 a.m. Eastern time. We also do have some issues on we have an update on family reunification information on this incident. Families of victims arriving at the University Medical Center are now being asked to go to the UMC Conference Center on the first floor that is across from Tower 2, which is the midpoint of the hospital. I did also want to turn over to one of our Fox News correspondents, Alexandria Hoff. She does have a new report out for us that I do want to play for you right now as we do await more information.
Our prayers for those who have lost their lives in the city of New Orleans.
At least 10 people are dead and dozens more wounded in what police say was an act of violence on New Year's Day. It happened on Bourbon Street, one of the busiest areas of the New Orleans French Quarter. A man driving a pickup truck accelerated quickly around a series of police barricades and rammed into a crowd celebrating the new year. Officials say there is no doubt this was a targeted attack.
It was very intentional behavior. This man was trying to run over as many people as he possibly could. It was not a DUI situation.
From there, things escalated quickly. The man crashed the truck, then began firing at police, wounding at least 2 officers. Both are in stable condition. After the suspect died, improvised explosive devices were found at the scene.
We are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. Stay away from Bourbon Street, Canal Street, all the way to St. Anne, until we can figure out what is going on.
Today's attack comes less than 2 weeks after a similar incident at a Christmas market in Germany. New Orleans police had been on heightened alert and had said more than 300 officers were deployed to the area, but they still weren't able to stop the attack.
This perpetrator, who went around our barricades in order to conduct this, he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did.
The White House says President Biden has been briefed and the FBI is taking lead on the investigation. In Washington, Alexandria Hoff, Fox News.
Thank you to Alexandra for the latest. And you actually did hear some clips there from that press briefing from law enforcement officials a bit earlier this morning. And if you are just tuning in with us here, we are going to bring you that latest update set to start here in just about 40 minutes as we are awaiting new information. In the meantime, I did want to take you back out to this live
Welcome
look
back
right
here
now.
on Live Now from Fox. You are taking a live look over at the scene.
Apologies, this live look right now, as we do actually have a statement from President-elect Donald Trump. He is reacting to this right now, and I do want to read it to you here on Live Now from Fox. He's calling this, quote, an act of pure evil. In this statement he just did put out on Truth Social, and I am going to read it to you. It says, quote, the crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. Again, we are hearing from officials throughout the morning here. We also did hear from the White House and President Biden just a little bit ago. And I do want to speak a little bit to what we do know as of right now, these four key bullet points, if you will, as we await this other press conference. And I am going to give you this other live look on your screen here of this scene, which you can see still very active there on Bourbon Street and Canal. Again, law enforcement asking you, if you are in this area, to try and avoid it, as this is a very active scene right now. But here is, again, what we do know, that 10 people were killed, dozens have been injured. Again, this suspect, he plowed into people and into this crowd at about 3:15 this morning Eastern time on New Year's Day. People were there celebrating, as I said just a little bit ago, many people in town for the Sugar Bowl, which is that college football playoff game. City officials again saying 35 people are injured, many of them transported to 5 local hospitals. The FBI is investigating this incident as an act of terror. They did say a bit earlier in that press briefing we played you that the mayor had come out and said that it was, but the FBI was not yet confirming that it was. And now it is being investigated as an act of terror. And police say the suspect is dead after he jumped out of his pickup truck and he traded gunfire with responding officers. 2 police officers were injured, but they are in stable condition. Again, if you are just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we are sharing these live statements with you as we do get these reactions in here to our newsroom. I actually do want to read out a statement from President Biden just a little bit earlier today, as well as we did hear from the White House. And that statement said, quote, the FBI is taking the lead in the investigation. They are investigating this incident as an act of terrorism. I am grateful for the brave and swift response of local law enforcement in preventing even greater death and injury. I have directed my team to ensure every resource is available as federal, state, and local law enforcement work to get to the bottom of what happened as quickly as possible to ensure that there is no remaining threat of any kind. So again, we are going to just keep an eye on all of this for you here on Live Now from Fox. Again, we are expecting that press briefing to happen here just about the 12 o'clock hour or so. In the meantime, let's go away for another 2-minute commercial break on Live Now. We'll be right back.
the shots, wipe your snot with it. It's a headshot, you a drop with it. Whipping the dope, better lock with it. 30 to life, get a cop with it. You don't want problems, you not with it. You got a gun, shoot a op with it. You waving that shit, hit a cop with it. Scheming shot, I shoot a shot with it. I want the block on that hot shit. Make it lean with it, rock with it. Cuz got a Glocky and pop with it. I want the guap and the thought with it. Fat ass in the top with it. Let that bitch give me some mop with it. Money dance on the clock with it. I'm on the mic, I won't stop with it. Watch how I switch it. Niggas be acting like bitches. Niggas stop hating, tripping. Cuz keep thinking you British. Don't hurt nobody. You know nigga be scared. If you scared, go to church. You know I keep my herb. I don't need none of dirt. Nigga fuck with me, be dead. Nigga take two to your head. It ain't matter, so yeah. Nigga just lay right there. Nigga won't play around here. Nigga gon' spray around here. Let him know. Nigga won't play around here. Nigga gon' spray around here. I'm on the block on that hot shit. Nigga lean with it, rock with it. Cuz got a Glocky and pop with it. I want the guap and the thought with it. Fat ass in the top with it. Let that bitch give me some mop with it. Money dance on the clock with it. I'm on the mic, I won't stop with it. Watch it get hot with it. Smooth nigga, but a scotch with it. Pippin' the from the Scott with it. On the mic, smoking pot with it. Weed fur like a fox hit it. On the pivot like a box with it. Won't fight when I ops with it. That's a fake click and a props with it. Back on the block with it. Niggas gon' flop with it. Gunshots, niggas flock with it. That's the perfect way to end the plot with it.
All right, well, I am going to take you back out live to that scene right now, one of the many images coming into our newsroom here. This is just one of those live looks right now, and we actually do have another perspective to show you from our Fox affiliates as they are bringing us all of these images just hours after this horrible attack on New Year's Eve. Again, this is now being investigated by the FBI. They have taken over that investigation as an act of terrorism. And we actually do have a new reaction in here from many people, lawmakers, and we've been bringing you these reactions all morning. I am going to pull it up on the screen right now. This is from Senator Tom Tillis. He is saying, quote, horrific terrorist attack in the great city of New Orleans, praying for the innocent victims and their families. God bless the first responders who assisted the injured and the law enforcement who tracked down the terrorists. Now, again, that's still under investigation. We don't know who this man who did this is, and we're hoping, again, to get some of those answers in about 30 minutes or so here. It has now been confirmed that he was a terrorist. However, again, this is being investigated as an act of terrorism, and we will hopefully get those answers, a little bit more insight into a motive, who this person was, as well as some of the victims. We don't know who they were either. And of course, as I was saying a little bit earlier too, a lot of people were in town for this Sugar Bowl that is set to still go on tonight. I am going to pull up that live image because we do have that in here to our newsroom as well. That Sugar Bowl, which is that college playoff game, that is set to still go off tonight. But there is going to be some increased security as well as hopefully we get a little bit more information on that as well. That's the latest with that, though, as we heard a bit earlier this morning from law enforcement after all of this did happen. Now, law enforcement also did say that they are going to be providing us updates throughout the day. So potentially more than one press briefing with this information. And I did have an interview a little bit earlier today with Lieutenant Randy Sutton, and he was in law enforcement. He's retired law enforcement. I asked him, you know, if we're getting these multiple updates throughout the day, are we really going to get more information that quickly? And he said yes, that this is moving very quickly. And the latest here right now, the Associated Press reporting that investigators are searching for potential explosive devices on scene. So let me pull up another image of that live scene for you. Here's what we know from the Associated Press. Investigators combing the French Quarter for potential explosive devices. And a law enforcement official did tell that to the Associated Press. However, the official was not authorized to discuss details of the investigation publicly and spoke to the Associated Press on the condition of anonymity. Now, we also did hear from the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge saying officials are investigating at least one suspected improvised explosive device at the scene. Hopefully we get more information on that as well a little bit later. Again, just so many questions that we don't have a whole lot of answers to right now, but I did want to play out one of my interviews a little bit earlier. You heard me mention Lieutenant Randy Sutton, who is retired law enforcement. I asked him a lot of questions about this, what comes next, as well as just the investigation as a whole. I do want to play that out for you now as we do await this press conference. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox as we continue to follow this breaking news out of New Orleans after a man drove a truck into a crowd of people, killing 10, injuring 30. We do have this update that the FBI is now investigating this as an act of terrorism. So for that, I do want to bring in Lieutenant Randy Sutton. He's retired law enforcement. He's a friend of the show. Appreciate you joining us on short notice. Sad way to start the new year, of course. I guess I just want to get your first initial reactions when you woke up this morning and you heard this news. What went through your head?
Well, I woke up this morning to this news. I was notified about this attack and have been keeping up with the reports in the media and watched the press conference by the mayor and the police chief and the FBI. This is clearly a terrorist attack. I was a little surprised at the press conference that was done a little earlier, where the FBI assistant special agent in charge said they were not treating it as a terrorist attack, which I didn't quite understand. Well, I guess there's been some clarification now. So this attack is horrendous, and it is demonstrative of what we have seen in other terrorist attacks recently in Europe. In fact, just about a week or so ago during the Christmas season in Germany, a vehicle was utilized to do a similar type of terrorist attack and killed people there. This is a relatively easy target for something like this. You have a massive crowd of people, and a vehicle can do, extreme amount of damage as it did today. And it's very difficult to guard against it unless you put cement barricades to prevent vehicles from coming onto the road there. So what we're seeing now is just the initial part of the investigation. There's also been a report that there were explosive devices found at the scene. This is going to add another dimension, and it shows that this is a well-planned attack.
A lot of questions I have for you, but let's just go back to your initial comment about this being, you saying that it's a terror attack. Again, the FBI investigating this now as an act of terrorism. Is there a reason, though, why a bit earlier this morning they didn't outright come out and say, we're investigating this as an act of terrorism? Is there a reason why they may not have done that? And now that this is an act of terrorism investigation, does that change anything?
It really doesn't change anything, because they announced this morning that the FBI was going to be taking over the investigation. They did that at the press conference. And of course, if the FBI takes over an investigation, there has to be a federal nexus to that. And even if 10 people were killed, this would, if there was no federal nexus, such as a terrorism nexus, then the local authorities in New Orleans would be handling it. So the fact that the FBI came out immediately and said they were taking over this investigation, it really created a kind of weird dynamic when the ASAC said that it wasn't being investigated as terrorism. So I think she basically just misspoke, and they've clarified it since then. But now, what's the difference? The difference is if it's a guy who is just bent on killing people for his own weird purposes. The difference is, what was there an ideology involved here? And that's the difference between a terrorism incident and a mass murder.
And when can we expect to get answers here? I know this is probably going to be lengthy, but in terms of these press briefings, we did hear them say they're going to give us updates multiple times. All right, we are going to pause that. I'll bring that interview back to you, but we are hearing from President Biden live right now on all of this. Let's head over there.
I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from CIA, to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened?
Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So, Mike.
All right, so very brief comments there. We did catch the very tail end of President Biden speaking on all of this. So what we're going to do right now is we are going to head back to my interview that I was just playing for you, because Lieutenant Sutton did offer a lot more insight into all of this. So I do want to head back to that right now. Can we really expect new information at each time we're getting those briefings? Does that happen this quickly?
Yeah, they're developing information, literally by moment. So yeah, they're gathering the information, and they will be dribbling it out as the day goes by. Remember, this is a massive investigation. Okay, we know we have one suspect here who's now been killed by the police. And they have to determine were there other people involved? Are there other devices that have been planted? Is there a secondary attack plan? And then they got to go deep into the motivations of the suspect. They're going to have to be doing search warrants on all of his properties, whether they're going to do search warrants on his residence, on his devices, his laptop, his phone. And it's a massive investigation.
Exactly. And you mentioned something at the beginning of when I brought you in here, that this was it's a large crowd of people, right? So makes sense, I guess, if you are going to try to do as much damage as possible, that would be your target. Can we talk about if we're seeing this, has we seen this play out multiple times before? And in terms of planning something like this, I mean, like you said, we're seeing explosive devices. In terms of planning this, how was that really possible, given the amount of law enforcement that typically are around these large crowds during these times?
Yeah, this is a real conundrum, because this is a very easy target, and this is a dream come true for a terrorist or an attacker, because you have a ton of people concentrated in a very small area. That is the beauty of this for a madman or a terrorist or someone bent on killing as many people as possible. And the utilization of a vehicle is something we have seen terrorists use quite often in the last few years. It's unless they had temporary barricades up, and these temporary barricades they're only for traffic control. They're not for security, really. The only way to target hardness from a vehicle attack would be to put cement barricades at different locations, which would limit the access and the ability for a vehicle attack to happen.
I know we talked about questions still remaining here, because there are a lot, right? But given your background in law enforcement, going through your head, is there anything that really sticks out to you as a big question mark, or what needs to come next when trying to figure all of this out?
Oh, I've got a ton of questions. The background of the suspect is going to be is the number one. That's the number two priority. The number one priority is to search for those explosive devices. They could be anywhere, and they know that, and that's a really, really dangerous situation. So that's going to be priority number one. Priority one is saving lives, safeguarding lives. Now, two is determine if there's anyone else involved, determine what this guy's background was. What was it what was his ideology? Now, I did read an interesting tidbit in one of the articles that was written, and one of the news reports, and that was that the suspect had a black flag attached to his vehicle. And I haven't verified that, but that was in one of the news reports that came out. And if that's true, that would, indicate, of course, that there might be, he's indicating that he's doing this as, as an Islamic terrorist. But I don't know that. I don't know for fact. But it's interesting that I read that there was a black flag attached to his, or flying from his vehicle.
And I did also want to touch on one other thing here, because a lot of people were in town for the Sugar Bowl, which is this college football game. And we are hearing that now there is going to be increased security. But in terms of what that's going to look like now, can you talk a little bit about what they're going to be implementing in light of all of this?
Yeah, I can imagine there's going to be immense security now. And that's going to be, and to stand up, well, first of all, they were going to have good security there anyway. There's no doubt in my mind, because, this isn't new to the law enforcement community in New Orleans, dealing with big crowds, and the football game, of course, is one of them. But this is going to bring it to a whole different level. They're going to be doing probably bag checks of people when they walk in. They may be doing vehicle checks. It's to throw up a really tight security perimeter this late in the game is going to have its own set of challenges.
All right, Lieutenant Randy Sutton, always appreciate you coming on the show. Anything else you want to add before I let you go here?
I just think that we all owe thoughts and prayers to the families and loved ones of all of those victims who have been killed, and those who've been injured, and the officers who've been injured as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you to Lieutenant Randy Sutton there, as we do continue to follow this breaking news out of New Orleans, Louisiana. We are going to go away for a 2-minute break on Live Now from Fox. Did want to remind you, though, if you are just tuning in for all of this, we are expected to get a press update here at just about 20 minutes or so at noon Eastern time. As soon as we see that pop up here, of course, we're going to bring it to you in full to bring you the latest here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back. Welcome back here on Live Now from Fox as we continue to follow this breaking news out of New Orleans, Louisiana, where earlier this morning, as people were celebrating New Year's, a man drove his pickup truck into a crowd, killing 10 people. 35 are injured. Many of them went to 5 local hospitals. I did want to show you again this live look that we're getting into our newsroom here of Bourbon Street, and you can see that it is still blocked off with that police presence. Another live image here into our newsroom, and we're crediting EarthCam for this. Thank you for this live image, a different perspective there. As you can see, we've been showing this image actually throughout the morning, where we've been seeing officers coming and going, walking through the space. Again, this area still closed down for this investigation. The FBI now investigating this as an act of terrorism. And we did hear law enforcement officials this morning asking people to please avoid this area. Well, we've also been bringing you a lot of reaction here on Live Now from Fox throughout the morning as well. Here is a new statement in here from the platform X that was just brought into us. This is from Council Member Oliver Thomas. And he says, quote, "I'm at the emergency room now, praying for the victims and first responders of last night's mass casualty on Bourbon Street. Thank you to the entire team who has brought the officers involved here to stable condition. We know the predator has been killed." And again, still unsure who that man was, why he did this. All information that I do want to remind you we are going to be hopefully getting here in just about 15 minutes or so at the 12 p.m. Eastern time hour here on Live Now from Fox. Did also want to read you this reaction that we brought you a little bit ago, but I did want to share it because it is from President Joe Biden. He has been briefed on all of this, and we did get this statement in from the White House, and this is what it says. It says, quote, "President Biden has been briefed on the horrific news that a driver killed and injured dozens of individuals in New Orleans overnight. And the White House has been in touch with the New Orleans Mayor-Cantrell to offer support. The FBI is already on the ground supporting local law enforcement in the investigation, and the president will continue to be briefed throughout the day. I also did want to try and pull up this statement if we can here. Again, this is from the Sugar Bowl CEO, and if you are just joining us here on Live Now from Fox, the Sugar Bowl is this college playoff game that is set to still go on tonight as scheduled as of right now, with increased security. But a lot of people were in town for the Sugar Bowl, and now we're getting that reaction from the CEO, so I do want to read that as well. This is from Jeff Hundley. He says, the Sugar Bowl committee is devastated by the terrible events from early this morning. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. We are in ongoing discussions with authorities on the local, state, and federal levels, and will communicate further details as they do become available. We also do have a statement from President-elect Donald Trump. I did want to read that out as well to you. And let me just pull up this live image for you right here as I read that to you. Okay, so this is on his platform, Truth Social. It says, quote, the crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. All right, I did also want to pull up two more reactions that my wonderful producer Carla has been pulling in for us here on Live Now from Fox, as we do get these reactions in from lawmakers. This is from New York Governor Kathy Hochul. She says, quote, we pray for the families of those we lost and everyone impacted by last night's horrific terror attack in New Orleans. We have no indication that there are any credible threats to New Yorkers. At my direction, the New York State Police are on high alert to keep our communities safe. All right, and Carla is also going to pull up this one from Texas Governor Greg Abbott, as we're also just getting this into our newsroom. Our prayers go out to the victims of this heinous crime in New Orleans. I have been briefed by the Texas Department of Public Safety on this attack and commanded them to get to the bottom of it immediately with a special focus to ensure no one in Texas faces any safety threat. Again, all those reactions coming in, and my producer's actually saying we do have one more coming in right now. All right, so that should be up on your screen right now. Office of Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, he's saying, quote, all Texans join Jan and me in standing with our neighbors in Louisiana in the wake of what the FBI is calling a terrorist attack. We pray for the families of those who have lost loved ones and those who are injured. Once again, we are grateful to the brave men and women of law enforcement. So again, we are hearing now, the FBI investigating this as an act of terrorism. That press briefing set to start here hopefully in 10 minutes or so, where we will get more information on all of this, and you can count on us here on Live Now from Fox to bring that to you. Really quickly, I did want to share a programming note if you are here for the Rose Parade, because we were telling you here that we were going to be airing that on our main stream. What you're watching right now, well, we are changing our plans to continue to cover this. So I did want to pull up this QR code on your screen. If you would like to watch the Rose Parade, you can scan that QR code. It will take you to that stream. It is happening right now, and we are taking it without a commercial interruption. So if you are here for the Rose Parade, then you will want to scan that QR code. But if you would like to keep up with the latest on everything going out in New Orleans, then you will want to stick with us here on Live Now from Fox on this mainstream. We're again going to bring you that press briefing shortly. I do want to go away for our final 2-minute break of the hour so we can monitor all of this for you and bring it to you when it does start. We'll be right back.
Turn up. Hop in the beat to get money. Nigga just enter discussion. My nigga, you know that I'm coming. Boys running. Reason to the paper. Nigga, fuck it. Got a baby song. Every day I wake up and it's looking sunny. I always blaze up, yeah, I'm getting blunted. I gotta make some, yeah, nigga, monthly. I tell her shake something, she really want it. I'm always waking up and that pussy running. Yeah, I'm always chasing money, so I'm getting funky. I said this real talk, and I ain't trying to be funny. No, hit it once then dub it, Nah, I ain't trying to cuff it, I'm just trying to fuck it, Smacking her ass and then rub it, So good that I love it, and I treat it like nothing. And I got it for dinner, but also wine from. Out of Mississippi, shit flooded. They said that it's contaminated or something. I bet somebody went in there with an trunk it. We coming to get, I check, just tell them cut it. Cut it. Hop in the beat to get money. Nigga just enter discussion. My nigga, you know that I'm coming. Boys running. Reason to the paper. Nigga, fuck it.
Right now, and we're going to start with this off of the social media platform X. Again, we've been telling you all morning here the FBI is now investigating this as an act of terrorism, and so here is a post from them that I do want to read to you. This morning, an individual drove a car into a crowd of people on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing a number of people and injuring dozens of others, and as we do know, many of them taken to local hospitals in the area. The subject then engaged with local law enforcement and is now deceased. The FBI is the lead investigative agency, and we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. So again, that statement in from the FBI. I did also want to pivot because we do have this new information in from the White House. You're seeing a portion of it on your screen right now. I have the full thing pulled up in front of me, and so I am going to read that to you right now. President Biden called New Orleans Mayor LaToya Cantrell this morning to offer full federal support following the horrific news that a driver killed and injured dozens of individuals in New Orleans overnight. He has been briefed on the latest developments by senior FBI and DHS leadership and his Homeland Security team, and he will continue to be briefed on this incident throughout the day. The FBI is investigating this incident as an act of terrorism, and President Biden has directed his team to ensure every resource is available as law enforcement works to get to the bottom of what happened as quickly as possible and to ensure that there is no remaining threat of any kind. All right, so again, that just in from the White House that we did want to read off to. And then we also are getting this statement from President-elect Donald Trump. And we did just pull that up here. This is also from Caroline Leavitt, who is his press secretary. He posted this to his Truth Social account maybe just about an hour or so ago. I am going to read just a portion of it. It says the crime rate in our country is at a level that nobody has ever seen before. Our hearts are with all of the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. So again, it's just some reaction we're getting, and I think we may have a couple more that we wanted to pull up. Yep, okay, all right. So this is from our content partners in Fox 5 Atlanta. It says the Atlanta Police Department says it is increasing their security after the attack early this morning in New Orleans that resulted in the deaths of at least 10 people and dozens of injuries, including 2 police officers. So we're seeing other areas of the country increasing their security and police presence in light of all of this. All right, let's head over to New York Governor Kathy Hochul as she put out this statement. We pray for the families of those who we lost and everyone impacted by last night's horrific terror attack in New Orleans. We have no indication that there are any credible threats to New Yorkers. At my direction, the New York State Police are on high alert to keep our communities safe. So again, we're seeing a reaction from lawmakers and also just leaders in other states across the country about how they are reacting to this news out of Louisiana. I did want to we have one more here from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Thank you, Carla, my producer. Our prayers go out to the victims of this heinous crime in New Orleans. I've been briefed by the Texas Department of Public Safety on this attack and commanded them to get to the bottom of it immediately with a special focus to ensure no one in Texas faces any safety threat. All right, I just want to make sure with Carla that that's all the reaction. Okay, so that's all the reaction we have in as of right now from lawmakers and leaders across the country. Of course, we're monitoring social media here, and when we do get these new reactions in, we bring them to you live, raw, and unfiltered here on Live Now from Fox. All right, well, live is what we do best, so I do want to take you out live again to this image that we've been bringing you throughout the morning here. As of right now, investigators are searching for potential explosive devices. That's the latest here from the Associated Press. And again, if you are just joining us on Live Now from Fox, we're expected to get updates throughout the day here from law enforcement officials. And again, this latest briefing hopefully set to start here in just about 3 minutes or so. Again, this could not start on time. This could start later. Either way, we're keeping an eye on it for you, and we'll continue to bring you the latest here as we do learn it. But again, I do want to read you just a recap of what we know right now. This is the latest here. Again, all from the Associated Press. A man drove his pickup truck into a crowd and killed 10 people before being shot to death by police. This is all according to authorities. More than 30 people were injured in the attack, which the FBI is investigating now as an act of terrorism. The driver was killed in a firefight with police following the attack around 3:15 this morning along Bourbon Street near Canal Street, in the area teeming with New Year's celebrators. They were all out there celebrating the new year. And again, a lot of people in town as well for this Sugar Bowl, which is that college football playoff game. So lots of people on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, and it is a very populated area. A lot of people across the country know New Orleans. They know Bourbon Street. This is where all of this took place. As of right now, what you're seeing on your screen here, investigators are combing the French Quarter for potential explosive devices. Again, we are also hearing, we heard a little bit earlier from the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge saying officials are investigating at least one suspected improvised explosive device at the scene. That's the latest as of right now out of New Orleans, as we are still awaiting this press briefing. I also did want to pull up this information from Leslie Harris, and let me pull it up here on the screen. Let's see if we can read this. Okay, so here's another statement we're getting in. Last night's incident was simply horrific. We are all grappling with what exactly happened and why. I will share information as I have it. For now, families should call 311 for centralized information about the victims. The New Orleans New Year's Day Tragedy Fund has already been established for victims and their families. Again, this is all reaction here coming in, and we do bring it to you on Live Now from Fox as we do get it. For right now, though, I did want to show you this other image, and we are crediting EarthCam for this. This is just another look at that scene on Bourbon Street right now. And again, we've been seeing these police officers throughout the morning walking through the streets there. This is just one of the many images we have been bringing you throughout the day right now as we are awaiting this briefing to start. I also did want to show you another live look right now at the site of where the Sugar Bowl is going to still happen tonight. Again, with that increased security. So that is still going to happen, and we are going to keep an eye on all of this. But again, that reaction you just heard, that tweet we just read you, was from Leslie Harris. She's with the New Orleans City Council District. And so again, any more information we get, we're going to bring to you here on Live Now from Fox. Now, if you are just joining us, I do want to quickly recap everything we know. If you are just joining us, if you've been if you are just joining us, excuse me, then you would know that we are waiting for this press briefing to start here in just about hopefully a few minutes or so. And again, I do have this feed pulled up right now, but it doesn't appear that anyone's up there. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull up, again, this live image for you here as I reread just some of the key points here, because again, there's still a lot of information that we don't know. And some of the things we are hoping to get an answer to at this press briefing are, was there a motive? Who were the people who were killed? Who are the ones still in the hospital? What condition are they in? And just where does this investigation go from here? Also, where did this person come from? Why did he do this? So many questions. But from my interview that I had with Lieutenant Randy Sutton just a little bit ago, he's retired law enforcement. He told me that, yes, we may actually have a lot of those answers sooner than we think, because this is a very fast moving investigation. So for right now, I do want to read to you just a bit about what we know as of right now. 10 people were killed and dozens have been injured after a driver drove their car into a large crowd on Canal and Bourbon Street. Again, all this happening at about 3:15 this morning. City officials saying 35 people are injured, many of them taken to local hospitals. The FBI investigating this now as an act of terror. And police said the suspect died after he jumped out of his pickup truck and traded gunfire with responding officers. 2 police officers were injured and in stable condition. As I am reading this information to you, I did want to pull up this other live image that we are getting in here, because I believe this is going to be the area where this press briefing is going to be held. So we are now getting in this feed. Again, it doesn't appear as though anyone is set up there right now, so we may be waiting a little bit to get some more information. But again, either way, we'll bring this to you as soon as this does start. Lots of reaction again coming in. We did hear from President-elect Donald Trump. He called this an act of pure evil. I am going to change the image here because it does look like someone has stepped into the screen. All right, no, I step back out, so let's leave it there for a second. But again, we did hear from President-elect Donald Trump, and we also heard from President Biden saying his heart going out to the victims of the Bourbon Street attack as well. He did say, and I do want to read that quote a little bit to you again, the FBI is taking the lead in this investigation and is investigating the incident as an act of terrorism. Biden says he's grateful for the brave and swift response of local law enforcement in preventing an even greater death and injury. All right, so we're getting that standby slate, which means hopefully something will be happening here soon in terms of a press conference. In the meantime, I did want to take you back out to this live image. What we're going to do here on Live Now from Fox is we are going to step away for a 2-minute break. But if you are just joining us, I did have a programming note for you. Some of you may be here for the Rose Parade because we were advertising that we would be streaming that here for you. Due to all of this, we are going to pivot, but if you would like to watch it, and that is why you're here, I did want to pull up this QR code on the top corner of your screen. You can scan that on your smartphone. If you open up your camera app, you can point it at the QR code and touch your screen. It should bring you to our YouTube channel, and that is where you will be able to watch the Rose Parade in full if that is why you're here. However, if you would like to keep watching the coverage here of New Orleans, Louisiana, you can stay on this mainstream how you're watching. But again, that is for those who want to watch the Rose Parade out of Pasadena, California. All right, let's go away for a 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. Hopefully that press briefing will be on the other side. Either way, we're going to keep you up to date with all of this. Stay with us.
I got the dough, not the Frito. Eat these chips like a Cheeto. Me, bro, shooting my shot like a free throw. I need me a shoot, and I'ma keep on till I look like Cletus. You young cheaters catching shells. I ain't talking about Adidas, but me get reefer. I don't f coke, don't give a neither. Looked at my people get left in the bleachers. Turned up like a speaker. I'll hit from the back and go deeper. Ride the boat like a leader. Turn up to a screamer. Hold up, she a creamer. Time to switch it up. Lick it up. I'ma live it up. Get hate and just give it up. You wanna be me, but ain't big enough. Too much cap in your rap, it ain't real enough. Go with me, cause I'm killing you. You wanna hug, you ain't get enough. Love, I ain't feeling you. But let's go through drilling you. Popping like a pillar song. We're a pillar song. Eating, all look like cleavage. Yeah, I'm cheaters catching shells. I ain't talking about Adidas. Quick with me, get away for smoke. Don't give a neither. Shot up my peoples, get left in the bleachers. But I killing and dreaming. Out here steady scheming. Get back, get your beanie, kill it. Perfect season. The life for the genie. Weekday to the weekend. Every day be tweaking. Tweak. Those up pull up, bleeding, bullets go put it thicker than defense. Chopper cut up the weakness. Simple tap, you get even. Enemies give me reason. They beat a less breathing. I ain't got none. They probably all under the cement.
But as you can see, we're still having people doing mic checks, and we have not seen any official step up yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to pivot, and I am going to show you this other live image that we've been bringing you throughout the show here of that scene on Bourbon Street. We actually do have some new reaction into our newsroom. We've been bringing you statements from law enforcement and other officials across the country due to all of this news, reacting to this tragedy that 10 people are now dead and 35 injured after a man drove his pickup truck into a crowd of people celebrating New Year's this morning. We are hearing from Councilmember Freddie King III. He is with the Orleans Parish. Very brief comments, but I do want to play them out for you here on Live Now from Fox as he is reacting to all this.
State police are doing an investigation, looking into maybe additional accomplices to the driver. NOPD officers took the driver out. They did sustain some injuries in the shootout, but they're expected to pull through, and that's just the latest I have right now.
And Senator, what else can you share?
The same similar information that we have at this time. Again, I just want to express my condolences and my heart breaks, our heart breaks for all of the victims, those innocent lives who were lost, and those who are recovering. This is not who we are as a city, and we won't stand for it. And right now, we're going to continue to gather information and come up with identifying what exactly took place, how he was able to breach those bollards on Bourbon Street, but no new information at this time.
What are your thoughts on any potential changes when it comes to Bourbon, whether it's, just pedestrian traffic? What are your thoughts on that?
I think everything is on the table right now. Shame on us as a city and as leaders if we don't address this issue and figure out how to make the city safer. And I don't want to say we have any concrete plans of action right now, but definitely look at ways to make Bourbon Street safer for the pedestrians.
Okay. Anything else y'all want to add?
Yeah, I'll just add again that everything will be assessed and analyzed, and whatever we can do at the state level to support our local leadership, who I know is doing everything within their power to find out how we can make it more safe, we're going to do that.
State police are doing an investigation.
All right, so that was some reaction in there. I do have an update in regards to this press conference we were expecting. It is now, Fox News is reporting that we are now going to get that at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Again, we were expecting this to start around noon or 12:30 here on the East Coast. But again, Fox News now reporting that we are going to get that press briefing at about 2 p.m. Eastern time here on Live Now from Fox. So what we will do when that does happen is we will take it here live, raw, and unfiltered on our feed for you. All that new information we will bring to you. Now, of course, if that does change and it does happen a bit sooner, we will pivot to that as well. I do have the image there of where the media is set up on my screen, and I am monitoring it for you. So again, If it does show up, we will pivot. In the meantime, let's continue to talk about what we know, what we don't know right now as I bring you this live look again that we are getting out of our newsroom. I also do have this shot courtesy of EarthCam as well. And again, the latest here is that 10 people were killed, dozens injured after this pickup truck drove into this crowd of people as they were celebrating. Again, lots of people there for New Year's celebrating, but also this Sugar Bowl, this college playoff game that is still set to happen tonight, but they are increasing security. And again, we've been bringing you these reaction here on Live Now from Fox from law enforcement. We've heard from President-elect Donald Trump. We've heard from President Biden. What I do want to do right now, though, is I do want to play out the press briefing from a bit earlier this morning. That's the latest that we have.
I want to go now to somebody who was there. I believe we have an eyewitness on the phone on Bourbon Street when this happened. Jimmy Cothran. Jimmy, can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you doing?
Blessed, but I've been better.
I bet. Can you walk us through where you were this morning and describe what you saw?
We were kind of finishing out the night coming from Bourbon towards Canal, and there was a lot of commotion at the end, so we ducked off into a nightclub for a moment to let all that settle, what we thought was settling, and then within a couple of minutes of walking in, a group of frantic females run inside, push past security, and hide under tables. And so when we seen that, we live here, and unfortunately, our first thoughts were somebody shooting or chasing them. So we knew the club we were at, we ran upstairs. We knew they had a balcony. Whenever we got to the balcony, it is not what we expected. It was the beginning of the mass casualties. Dead right in front of us was someone's mother, twisted, obviously deceased. We counted 8 just from a couple of seconds of standing there, 8 bodies. 2 looked to be at least alive. I wouldn't say survivable, but alive. And the other 4 were clearly, very clearly, graphically deceased.
That is
and
a gut punch to hear.
No one was around. Like after they were mowed over, not knowing anything, like no one was helping these people. They wouldn't let us out. I have training personally, and they just immediately locked us in there. And we could see some people did eventually go and start attending to the bodies. One man, deceased, had tire tracks across his back, and then when someone turned him over, he had tire tracks across his stomach, and he was clearly crushed. The mother that was in front of us, she was just horribly disfigured. A little girl that we had seen dancing as we were walking up the street was as flat as a pillow. I mean, it just kept going. Like every eye shot, body.
It's difficult to hear. I'm sure it was far worse to witness and to experience.
It was unbelievable. It was only could be referenced to a movie. The way.
Did you see the pickup truck, Jimmy? Did you hear the gunshots that were apparently fired after this happened, or had you been in the nightclub at the time that this happened?
The gunshots is what we thought was the commotion up the street.
I see.
But it was so loud where we were kind of like in the thick of it. And then the truck, we heard the truck barrel by as more people piled in. And as soon as we got up to the balcony, he had already advanced 8 to 10 blocks. And that's what I was trying to tell the other people is there were no barricades. Like this barricade stuff they're saying is not true.
Were there any barricades at any part of Bourbon Street when you came into the French Quarter?
Yes, we have tank barricades, like the metal hydraulic raising, unrammable barricades, because this has happened so many times. When we got there, me and my friend were surprised that they hadn't put these up, because usually you can walk safely in the middle of Bourbon once you hit Bourbon. They weren't up. So you still kind of had to watch your back for cars, but this is at 8 p.m. So now we're at 3:15, 3:10 a.m. They never put the barricades up. This man was able to hit 70 miles an hour for a clean 8 to 10 blocks down Bourbon. And we had barricades.
You say 8 to 10 blocks,
absolutely.
Jimmy, during the time when you were in the club. How long did it take him to go, let's say, those 8 blocks, would you say? How many seconds?
A minute, 2 minutes tops. He was out of sight. Police were on foot when we got to the balcony with M16s hustling down the street. They didn't even have time to get in their vehicles yet and chase him. They were on foot chasing him. He was long gone. And the only thing that stopped him is when he wrecked out. And that was clean.
Yeah.
And y'all will figure out the coverage of where the carnage started and where he wrecked out, and that'll show you exactly how far he got, and that there were no barricades on Bourbon up.
When you walked out of that club, Jimmy, go ahead, please.
They had the flimsy triangle-style orange and white barricade. That's what they had.
I think you're referencing maybe what we're looking at here on screen, some of those barricades, similar to those perhaps. Jimmy, this is a city.
Nothing.
Yeah, that it has been through agony. It has been through hell this morning. When you walked out of that club, did you go home? Where are you now? What did you see? And how were people doing around you that were witnessing this as well?
Well, I mean, I'm at home now, but we were held prisoner with those sights and carnage and memory inside that club for over an hour and a half with no one telling us anything, which I understand you got to cordon off the crime scene. But even when they let us out, they never told us anything while we were in there. Like, a lot of us knew what happened, but some didn't. But even when they came in and told us to leave, they just started grabbing us. The police just started grabbing us by our clothes, throwing us out. And if you've seen my Facebook video, you can hear them in the background just throwing us, literally, physically grabbing hold of us and yanking us out the door. Doesn't matter who we were with, because my buddy that went with me, I think he went to the restroom. So when they said get out, they didn't care who you were waiting on. They wanted you out now. And if you didn't, they told you were resisting. They yanked us out. So me and him got separated. They put their hands on him, yanked him out because he's looking for me. And just the way they treated us after that. And the bodies are still there. They're just covered up with pink sheets. And you can see that in the video. So they walk us out past all these bodies again, treat us like crap, and say, have a nice night.
Unimaginable horror in New Orleans this morning. Jimmy Cothran, we are so grateful to you for sharing what you saw, for helping to fill in some of the details, some of the questions that so many people around the country have as they are watching the aftermath of this unfold. A lot of people are thinking about you and your city. Jimmy, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Do this until February 1st. On January 1st, we're starting a 4-week chair workout challenge.
We counted 8 just from a couple of seconds of standing there, 8 bodies. 2 looked to be at least alive. I wouldn't say survivable, but alive.
So I'm going to give you as much.
Continuing coverage now of the death investigation into Greece native and former inmate Robert Brooks. In court paperwork referencing the autopsy of Brooks, which is not yet available in its entirety, there are details about his multiple injuries from an attack by more than a dozen Marcy Correctional Facility correction officers and staff. Isabel Garcia breaks down what that paperwork tells us.
Yes, the paperwork is called an emergency risk protection order, which was filed by New York State Police against one of the corrections officers accused in Robert Brooks's assault. The details of the autopsy were used as supporting evidence in the application. This due to concern the individual, in this case David Kingsley, may harm himself or another. He was allegedly part of a group of a total of 14 individuals engaged in an assault on Robert Brooks on December 9th at the infirmary at Marcy Correctional. Brooks died at a Utica hospital the next day. In the protection application, it is noted the autopsy of Brooks was conducted at the Onondaga Medical Examiner's office on December 11th. It was determined Brooks suffered multiple bruises on his face and arms and legs, a fractured nasal bone, multiple soft tissue bleeding in his neck on both the left and right sides, as well as bleeding in the genitalia area. Now, the medical examiner also reported concerns for asphyxia, this due to compression of the neck, as well as Brooks's death due to actions of another. It also makes note the final cause and manner of death are still pending at this time. Now, once again, this information was part of an application for extreme risk protection for one of the corrections officers, David Kingsley, named to be involved in the assault. Meantime, family of Robert Brooks held a vigil last night in Rochester with his surviving son, Robert Brooks Jr., saying the family is hopeful his death was not in vain and will be a, quote, catalyst for change, end quote. For now, reporting in the studio, Isabel Garcia, News 8.
Watch your back for cars, but this is at 8 p.m. So now we're at 3:15, 3:10 a.m. They never put the barricades up. This man was able to hit 70 miles an hour for a clean 8 to 10 blocks down Bourbon. And we had barricades.
You say 8 to 10 blocks,
absolutely.
Jimmy, during the time when you were in the club. How long did it take him to go, let's say, those 8 blocks, would you say? How many seconds?
A minute, 2 minutes tops. He was out of sight. Police were on foot when we got to the balcony with M16s hustling down the street. They didn't even have time to get in their vehicles yet and chase him. They were on foot chasing him. He was long gone. And the only thing that stopped him is when he wrecked out. And that was clean. Yeah. And y'all will figure out the coverage of where the carnage started and where he wrecked out, and that'll show you exactly how far he got and that there were no barricades on Bourbon up.
When you walked out of that club, Jimmy, go ahead, please.
They had the flimsy triangle-style orange and white barricade. That's what they had.
I think you're referencing maybe what we're looking at here on screen, some of those barricades, similar to those perhaps. Jimmy, this is a city... Nothing. Yeah, that it has been through agony. It has been through hell this morning. When you walked out of that club, did you go home? Where are you now? What did you see? And how were people doing around you that were witnessing this as well?
Well, I mean, I'm at home now, but we were held prisoner with those sights and carnage and memory inside that club for over an hour and a half with no one telling us anything, which I understand you got to cordon off the crime scene. But even when they let us out, they never told us anything while we were in there. Like, a lot of us knew what happened, but some didn't. But even when they came in and told us to leave, they just started grabbing us. The police just started grabbing us by our clothes, throwing us out. And if you've seen my Facebook video, you can hear them in the background just throwing us, literally, physically grabbing hold of us and yanking us out the door. Doesn't matter who we were with, because my buddy that went with me, I think he went to the restroom. So when they said get out, They didn't care who you were waiting on. They wanted you out now. And if you didn't, they told you were resisting. They yanked us out. So me and him got separated. They put their hands on him, yanked him out because he's looking for me. And just the way they treated us after that. And the bodies are still there. They're just covered up with pink sheets. And you can see that in the video. So they walk us out past all these bodies again, treat us like crap, and say, have a nice night.
Unimaginable horror in New Orleans this morning. Jimmy Cothran, we are so grateful to you for sharing what you saw, for helping to fill in some of the details, some of the questions that so many people around the country have as they are watching the aftermath of this unfold. A lot of people are thinking about you and your city. Jimmy, thank you very much for being with us this morning.
Again, that was recorded earlier. Just a devastating account from that eyewitness.
Let's go in and bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And Ken, we just learned the name of the suspect. That has been the question on everyone's mind since this news broke this morning. What do we know?
That's right, Morgan and Kate. 4 senior law enforcement officials briefed on this matter say they have preliminarily identified this suspect as Shamsuddin Jabbar, with a birth date of October 26th, 1982. Again, Shamsuddin Jabbar. Now, they are still trying to determine information about his movements, his travel, his background, all that sort of thing. We obviously are scouring public records to learn as much as we can about this individual with a rather uncommon name. But that is the name, and clearly they are investigating whether this attack was inspired by ISIS, as we've been reporting. They're investigating whether a pole with a black flag affixed to the back of the truck was in fact an ISIS flag. These are all questions that are up in the air right now, but that is the identity of the suspect as we have learned it. This is reporting with Tom Winter, Julia Ainsley, and myself, guys.
And just a short time ago, we were playing back, Ken, the video of President Biden speaking, and he was asked a number of questions by reporters about a number of times about the suspect and whether the suspect was from the U.S. or perhaps from somewhere else. Do we have any clarity on that yet?
We do not have clarity on whether this is a U.S. citizen or where he was from. They're investigating whether he was not the owner of the truck. In fact, whether he got the truck from somewhere else. The truck had Texas plates. So all that is up in the air. We're trying to learn that. In fact, I've been standing here waiting to go on the air, so our colleagues may know more than I do at this point. We'll wait to see if they put notes in the system. But that is an open and active question right now. You can expect that President Biden may not have been briefed on this is changing by the minute, and we're getting information from our law enforcement sources. It takes time sometimes to work its way up the chain to the most senior people, but that's what we know at this moment.
You know, I want to go back to the beginning, if we can, Ken, because, you know, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, he said that his department was working with local law enforcement very early on to investigate this as a terrorist attack. What details did they have at the time? What clues did we see in the footage, in the UGC, the content that people sent in from eyewitnesses? What clues indicated that this was intentional and not a DUI, as some were wondering from the very beginning?
Well, the fact that he shot police officers and may have shot at the crowd with a rifle was their first clue, guys. And also just the nature of the attack, that horrific interview that you just heard about how he was able to get up to speed of 60 or 70 miles an hour. So they knew right away, and it was clear from the initial briefing this morning that the FBI was taking over this investigation, was taking the lead, and was investigating it as a potential act of terrorism. And then they had to fill in the blanks from there. And, you know, in addition to the facts on the ground, there's also a long history of these kind of vehicle attacks, many of which were inspired by ISIS, both in Europe, and then there was one in 2017 in New York City, inspired by ISIS. That doesn't mean ISIS terrorists were directing this from some bunker in the Middle East. Well, what we've seen time and again is people radicalized inside the United States, mainly online, carrying out attacks inspired by this ideology. They may never communicate with anyone about it, which is what makes it really difficult for authorities to ferret out. When people conspire, they communicate, and that can be learned, that can be picked up through eavesdropping, through informants or other methods. But if it's a lone wolf who just decides to do this one day on his own, that's a really, really difficult thing to stop. It's kind of the worst nightmare of counterterrorism authorities, guys.
And Ken, we've talked about this, but if people are just joining us, they may not know. We've talked about the pickup truck itself. There's an image that we've got, if we can put it on the screen, of that white pickup truck that the authorities say the suspect was driving. And on the back, in the lower left corner, you see a white pole on the back of the pickup truck and what looks like a flag or a piece of fabric of some kind. Ken, I know you've talked about it with your sources. Do you have any guidance on what that might be?
What they're telling us is they are actively investigating whether that is an ISIS flag. And that's what we've heard for the last few hours. They may know more. They likely do know more at this point about exactly what message, if any, was on that flag. But that was the working hypothesis. That was the investigative intent, was to learn whether that was an ISIS flag. And I haven't heard any other possible explanation for that. It's kind of a thing you don't see very often on a pickup truck. And it certainly would track with what we've seen in other events. But if true, that's just another troubling indicator here, pointing in a direction, guys. But we're not ready to say, obviously, no one is telling us specifically this was an ISIS-inspired attack, but we're getting signs that are pointing in that direction.
Do we have any more updated information on those potential homemade bombs? We know that we were listening to our local affiliate, WDSU, there on the ground, and they were saying that, you know, they were, as a precaution now, canvassing, for example, the Superdome, canvassing downtown, bringing in extra dogs. Do we know if they had located more devices or exactly where that stands?
We don't know the answer to that question. That's a great question, Morgan. As you said, we saw the local affiliate reporting on what appeared to be controlled detonations of suspicious packages found in the French Quarter. And the reporter said that the explosions sounded like firecrackers. That suggests to me those were not bombs, because if they were bombs, there would have been a much larger explosion and a much louder sound. But it suggests that the police are being extremely cautious and treating every stray backpack with suspicion, because they're not sure exactly what they have here. We heard the assistant FBI agent in charge of the New Orleans division say this morning that there were potential IEDs, potential bombs at the scene, but authorities have not said any more about whether they were real, how many, where they were found. Those are all questions we're trying to answer.
Ken, sorry, we were listening to our producers for a moment and I didn't hear you stop talking. I want to ask you about the gentleman who was on with Hallie Jackson, which we played a few moments ago, eyewitness to everything, said that he didn't see barriers. And he described those orange and white barricades that we've seen in some of the pictures and the video as the only thing that was up to stop traffic. It's not in that particular shot, but there were orange and white, I don't know what to call them, sort of
barriers that were broken.
Barriers that were broken. You see them in that picture there. Do we have any clarity, Ken? Because the New York Times is reporting that the city may have been upgrading they're called bollards or stanchions, the metal posts that emerge from the ground. You've seen them maybe if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., they have them around the Capitol building. They're designed to stop vehicles. Do we know if that's the case, that they were working on upgrading those and that's why they didn't have those up at the time?
I have not seen that NBC News has that reporting, guys, but I heard that interview and it really struck me. That guy is a New Orleans resident and he said, we have those hydraulic barriers that come up from the street. I've heard other experts on our air today say, well, you know, that's the solution in these cases. It prevents cars or vehicles from picking up speed to prevent this very kind of attack. If in fact those were under maintenance, they existed but they weren't deployed, that's going to be a significant concern and a source of introspection and discussion going forward, because it really is unimaginable that the authorities allowed a mass gathering knowing that this basic precaution that they had available to them was not deployed, if that's in fact what happened. And that's what this man told Hallie Jackson. You heard him there. He said, you know, I've seen those barriers come up. They come up from the ground. They're hydraulic balustrades, and they were not deployed at 8 p.m. when he was there on the ground, and they were not deployed at 3 a.m. when he was looking out the window. So yeah, that's something we need to do some more work on and learn whether that is in fact the case. But whether they were under maintenance or just not deployed, that's a significant question about how this was allowed to happen, guys.
Yeah. Well, Ken, I can tell you that the New York Times links, it's not our reporting, but they do link to a city website, City of New Orleans website that shows a notice that they are replacing and repairing that system until February, it says on their website. So we'll get more reporting on that. Ken Delanian, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
And to all our viewers, if you are just joining us, we are following breaking news right now out of New Orleans, where at least 10 people have been declared dead, dozens more hurt, injured after a pickup truck intentionally plowed through a Bourbon Street crowd celebrating New Year's Eve. You can see those videos there on your screen. Officials have now identified the suspect, who is dead, as Shamsud Din Jabbar. We are expecting them to hold a press conference later on this afternoon. Meanwhile, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security are investigating this incident as an act of terrorism.
We also know from law enforcement that authorities are trying to figure out if the suspect was firing a long gun rifle into the crowd as he was driving and plowing through the crowd in order to potentially maximize the damage. We learned earlier that this man shot at police officers, hitting two officers who are now in stable condition. And officials say they're also looking into, we talked about this a few moments ago with Ken Delanian, that white stick or pipe that you see on the very back gate of the pickup truck with a black cloth wrapped around it. It was affixed to the hitch, they say. They say it's possible the cloth could be a flag or contain certain markings. Ken Delanian was reporting that his sources are saying they are investigating whether it could be a connection to ISIS.
And looking at that photo, you can actually see 4 holes punctured in the black of that windshield. They appear to be gunshot holes. You can see they're right on the suspect's vehicle. NBC News law enforcement analyst and former Secret Service Special Agent Evie Pompouras joins us now. Evie, I don't know if you could hear the last of our conversation with Ken Delanian, but we were really talking about these stanchions, or this was a word that I have only learned in the past hour, sort of those barricades, right, that are typically meant for crowd control, or, you see them in Times Square, or you might see them, outside the Capitol building, that are meant to keep vehicles out. What do you think the purpose, the lesson here, if we can already draw a lesson this early on, is in terms of keeping those types of security measures up and running? There's been some reporting that there may have been possible upgrades being done to those, which is why we only saw those more flimsy, for lack of a better word, orange and white barricades potentially stop there. What do we take from this? What could have been done? What one still could do in a situation like this, Evie?
So what you're referring to, the hydraulics, those barricades, we have them at the White House, at the Capitol. They exist at hard targets where you're concerned about vehicles ramming a building, ramming a facility. They do work on hydraulics. They go up, they go down. So now what we're hearing, like what we heard from the witness, he's saying those exist, but they were not up. And there's a possibility, as you had the information from the website, that maybe they were not working. I will say this, whether they're working or not, it really is irrelevant. You have New Year's Eve, you're going to have thousands of people in this area. That is an area that collects a lot of people. It's an area that's had incidents in the past. It's not just some random neighborhood. I mean, it's the French Quarter. It's an area that's going to be busy. It is from my professional opinion, it is a hard target. New Year's Eve, lots of people, a very well-known area, an area that's had incidents in the past. It should have been, and I try not to be this person that second guesses or Monday morning quarterbacks people, but really it should have been secured. You can put vehicles, and when I say vehicles, you can even put police cars. Put police cars moving back and forth. It's something we would do all the time. You can put sand trucks, sanitation trucks. I've even used yellow buses from school. When I want a secure site, I remember I went to an area, they didn't have resources. I said, do you have yellow buses? The buses that you put children in? Yes, we do. Bring me all your yellow buses. And I stacked those up to secure the area. So given what we're seeing, it really isn't, considering that's New Year's Eve, considering we're high alert. And you know what? This happened 2 weeks ago in Germany, where there was a vehicle being rammed at a Christmas market. We reported it here on NBC. It went nationwide. It went worldwide. These are things that we have to listen to and pay attention to, because the other thing is copycats. And when we reported initially on the vehicle that rammed a Christmas market in Germany, that's the first thing I said, copycats. Copycats are concerned. Once one person does something, then another person says, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. And here's the thing, a vehicle, everybody has a vehicle. How easy is it to do this in a sense? everybody has a vehicle, so you really want to mitigate that risk. This individual, though, we also know that they had a weapon, a long weapon from what is being reported, who was either, again, it's still unclear, either he was firing as he was driving or he started firing after he got out of the truck, you know? And so the understanding is when you have this kind of intent, you're going in and your mindset is, I'm going to die when I do this, you know, and that's the type of mindset that you're dealing with, these nefarious actors. I understand the morbidity and I understand that we don't like to think this way, but considering that it's New Year's, like, we really have to think ahead of it. When I would do security plans, I didn't think like an agent or a law enforcement officer. I would think, if I was the bad guy, how would I get in? If I was the bad guy, how would I penetrate? And I would find those holes. That's how we have to think. So I do think that I think we're dealing with two things now. First is, who is he, getting his identity? And the big question on everybody's mind is going to be, is he a U.S. citizen? Is he not a U.S. citizen? I think that's going to be the next big discussion and figuring out what that is and where that conversation goes from there. How did he get in? Was it his vehicle? How long did he plan it? Right? Did he communicate this to other people? Did he not? Social media posts, his search history. How long was he doing this? How long did he do recon? Is he a local at the area who got somebody else's car? Is he from somewhere else?
Yeah,
you know, so we're going to look at all those things.
That's so interesting.
Afterward,
yes. Kate, I think you actually had an interesting question about that his identity at that point, right? You were talking about the reportable information we have now.
Well, the reportable information we have now is that three senior law enforcement officials briefed on the matter say they've identified the suspect. So if you're just joining us, the name of the suspect is Shamsuddin Jabbar, 42 years old. Officials are still working on his background, his potential travel history, et cetera. Evie, I wanted to ask you if I can switch gears a little bit. Given your expertise, your background in Secret Service and securing sites, right? You know how to do that. Yeah. What would you be doing right now in preparation for a game at the Superdome that happens in, I don't know how many hours. Tonight, hours from now? That has got to be what people are scrambling on right now in New Orleans. And yet when we went to our reporter, Jesse Kirsch, he was standing outside the Superdome. There wasn't a lot of police presence. It was pretty quiet. What would you be thinking about right now?
So I think they had their plan to begin with that they put into place, but they've reached out to ask for more assets. So when you're reaching out to ask for more assets, I think what they're trying to figure out is, where do we put these new assets? Do we want to close roads? When I was looking at the local reporting, there was talk and speculation that they would actually close the roads around the area of the Superdome. So are they going to do that? If they do that, that mitigates any type of, vehicle issue, ramming and all that. There was speculation that they were going to close, maybe not allow people to park closely or at any nearby parking garages and push them out. So that's something they would do closer to the event. You're not going to do that so early on. But I think it's also figuring out, where do we let people in and how do we secure that? I have to tell you, I'm not as concerned about securing the Superdome. That, to me, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier than securing the outer perimeter, because I've got a structure. I go into that structure, and the way it works is I clean that structure. What does that mean? It means I run my K9 through. They're looking for explosives. They're looking for IADs. I run my technicians through. They say the building is clear, the structure is clear, everything is good. Then they post it up. That's when you put your manpower, your officers, and everybody. You've got a secure building. It's locked down. Now we're ready to open the doors. And when you open the doors, that's when you funnel people through specific points that are manned by personnel. You have them go through metal detectors. You're looking through their person. You're looking through their belongings. That'll be another interesting thing. What belongings are they allowed to bring in? Are they allowed to bring in anything at this point? They might even change that. And then in addition to that, having K9 at those checkpoints. You want to, have that element there to see, did anybody touch any explosives, any residue that they could pick up, and then allowing those people in. So now when people pass through that checkpoint, they are clean. They are clean. So that's a pretty, I don't want to say simple, but it eliminates so many variables as opposed to securing something on the outside. My other concern and bigger concern really would be the outer perimeter. What are they going to do there? So as we saw you reporting before, the roads are open, people are moving. Didn't seem like there were a lot of police presence at that time. How far are they going to push people out? Again, anything that gathers large crowds, that offers an opportunity, easy access, that's where you're vulnerable. And again, you know, if I don't secure something, I can get in. The stadium, getting into the Superdome, that's going to be hard. But getting access to the outer perimeter, for me, if I'm a nefarious actor, not as hard.
It's so interesting, thinking about the outside versus inside of an event like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insight, Evie Pompouras. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, really interesting. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC News correspondent David Noriega, who is outside there live at the Rose Parade in Pasadena, California. I mean, David, talk about just a split screen of events on the same day, right? I mean, we saw the aftermath of this massacre down in New Orleans, and then you're seeing, you know, sort of what was expected to be a jubilant day there on the West Coast, which now I imagine people are pretty shaken by. This is a major event where you are. It takes place every single year. Have people there sort of heard about, are they aware of what happened in New Orleans overnight? Are there any extra security measures or reactions there in reaction to what happened in New Orleans?
So, look, so far there is no indication that the relevant authorities here are changing anything in terms of additional security, additional plans in response to what happened in New Orleans. But the reason for that is that this is already a very large-scale special event with a huge law enforcement presence and extensive security measures that they've been preparing for, they say, for months, right? So this is an event where the Department of Homeland Security has a sort of ranking system for special events. It's called the Special Event Assessment Rating, SEER. The Rose Parade is a SEER 2 event. The Rose Bowl game is a SEER 1 event. Those are the two highest levels of federal involvement in assisting state and local officials in preparing for and preventing any kind of incident at an event like this. So, you know, just walking the grounds here, there's a very, very heavy presence of specifically Los Angeles County Sheriff's personnel, Los Angeles County Sheriff's vehicles blocking all the intersections around the parade route. You know, we've been told that there are 1,000 law enforcement personnel on the ground here specifically for the parade. Now, that is a lot. It's also an event that draws about 800,000 people every year. So when you think about that, that's one law enforcement officer for roughly 800 people at the parade. It's happening in the middle of a dense urban environment. This is at, you know, Colorado Boulevard and Sierra Madre Boulevard. You see behind me, the parade route are major streets in Pasadena. This is sort of inherently a difficult area to secure. You can't put up hard physical vehicle barriers. They are blocking the intersections with police vehicles. And like I said, there are a lot of personnel present. The authorities involved here are expressing confidence that they have this event properly secured, that they have it properly secured every year, and that at this point, there's no specific threat to this event that would indicate a need for any kind of change to the plan as it exists. Now, of course, I don't want to speculate about, you know, comparing the level of security at the Rose Parade as it happens every year versus at New Year's Eve on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter in New Orleans as it happens every year, or if there were any kind of failures in New Orleans that might not be present here. But again, what we are hearing from both law enforcement and elected officials here is that they are confident that this parade and that the game coming up this afternoon are both very well secured.
All right, our thanks to David Noriega there on the ground reporting from that parade. We appreciate it, David.
Morgan, our NBC affiliate in New Orleans, WDSU, we've been dipping in and out of their coverage all morning. They spoke to a man who was visiting from California in New Orleans, staying at a nearby hotel. Take a listen to what he said.
Beforehand, it was just people having fun. I mean, there was a lot of people, a lot of police presence, but I never thought anything like this. But I didn't feel in danger at all when I was here yesterday. Of course, I'm surprised, but I don't know why they're still letting cars go through Bourbon Street. Even last night, which I was there were still like at midnight, 1 in the morning, there's still cars driving by, even though there's people walking all over the street. You got to dodge cars. So I don't think they should let any vehicles at all. It should always be blocked off at nighttime because something like this could happen. I couldn't believe that it's happening here, literally a block away from my hotel. As soon as I stepped out the hotel, the police, you cannot come out here. This is an active crime scene. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to come back this way, come back down. So I just came to really see what was going on. It's incredible.
That sound there from our affiliate WDSU in New Orleans, and we're actually going to right now go back to their live feed. This is our WDSU coverage on the ground. their coverage of the breaking news event.
Place for getting information on any victims of this tragic incident.
Yeah, we're getting lots of new video we're processing here in the studio as well, and getting lots of reaction from many leaders. I know a lot of them are at UMC right now because that's where a lot of the victims are. At this point, we still have only had there's 10 confirmed dead, at least 35 at the hospital, but both of those numbers could unfortunately rise with this.
And look, we talked about UMC, the work that doctors, nurses, and their support staff deal with. They are the highly trained people. This is a level 1 trauma center. We spoke about this earlier in our newscast as we have been on now for several hours, that those doctors hope and pray that they don't have to deal with a mass casualty situation like this. Unfortunately, that day came today where a lot of these victims were taken to UMC. Like Randy said, we are hearing that the death toll could rise. We hope that it does not. But it is a very, very fluid situation.
For people trying to make contact with their loved ones, we did talk to Councilmember Joe Giarrusso. He tells us that they may be able to find more information at City Hall, and that there at one point was like a triage place set up for people who are looking for information. I can't imagine if you had friends or family out there and you haven't heard from them at this point today, watching all the headlines. I know you're trying to find the latest information.
Yeah. We were even hearing about a British national that people are trying to find at this point that was, in town. And again, we've got the phone number if you are looking for a loved one. Unfortunately, with all of this, there is a phone number that you can call as well with the names of people who have been identified. But again, really hard to say because much of the French Quarter still a crime scene at this hour, and will likely be a crime scene for the next couple of days. We heard Council President Helena Moreno telling us that Bourbon Street will likely be closed for the next 2 days as they work to process all of that.
Let's get back to this topic here. We have Mike Kahn here, who's a former NOPD officer, SWAT team commander. The bollards that were in place, excuse me, Mike, we are going to talk about the bollards in just 1 second. Before we do, let's go live to Cassie Sherm, who is standing by. But Mike, you also stand by because we want to get more into the bollards and how this truck could get around those.
Yeah, that was actually a topic I was talking with a few other people because, yes, there was barricades, but these are the barricades that are those plastic, the orange striped barricades, not those bollards that come straight from the ground. But they have been working on construction. In fact, some of the business owners have told me they've watched some construction in that area, so I'm guessing that that one was being worked on. But on another note, we're just talking to some business owners in the area, and Kilwins, you guys just opened up 2 months ago. To have something like this outside your doors, it must be something that you've never thought would happen.
Yeah, it's really sad to see what happened and people losing their life like that, and I don't know what to say, but really I'm not worried about the business, more about the people that lost their life, and I guess we just have to work on security and doing some more effort to get things, better here in New Orleans, because this incident is just this weekend, but every weekend we see shootings, we see other things. So really, we need the help from the authorities to increase security and work on this, especially with the Super Bowl coming and Mardi Gras, and this could happen again for sure. But it's really sad for sure for the business because it's a good day today, Sugar Bowl, a lot of thousands of tourists in the city. For the game and also for celebrating the New Year's Eve, and really sad to see all these businesses closed around Bourbon Street and outside of Bourbon for that reason. But again, it's a very sad incident, and I feel bad for everybody and the families that lost their family.
For sure. And you guys were closing right when all this happened.
Yeah, at this time we were just locking up, and I just walked out of the store to Royal Street, and my business partner was locking up the door, and this car just went in the street and hit. I looked at the cameras right now. I can see just a little bit because we have the cameras inside the store, but I can see from the glass exactly at 3:17 and 11 seconds. That's when the car hit Bourbon Street and just took off. It was a white truck, and I can't see much details, but I see just the car going fast in Bourbon Street.
And if you were saying fast, like how? Pretty fast, right?
Yeah, I cannot tell really from the video because I see just partial view from the glass, but I see exactly the time with 3:17 and 11 seconds, you know.
And so what happens next? I mean, obviously, we have all this tape around your business. What have authorities told you?
I spoke to the FBI. I offered my help, you know, if anything with my cameras, you know, can help in the investigation. And they said, you know, they will call me later. They saw what I have. And I think in the corner here, we have the crime group camera. That's another group. So maybe this camera will help as well. But they told me they don't think like I can open for another 2 days, maybe 1 to 2 days. But I don't think we can catch the sugar bowl or maybe, you know, I don't know, this weekend too, but we'll see.
As a business owner, are you frustrated that something like this could happen right there?
Yes, but again, I see things happen almost every week or every 2 weeks. And again, I ask the authorities to work with us, to help us to secure the city. This city brings a lot of money to the state of Louisiana, and also tourists love it. And it's so different than many other cities in the U.S., and it's one of the top, I think, 10 cities in the U.S. top attractions. So really we need to do something here, you know. Again, I'm not sad to lose 2 business days, you know, money comes and go, but I'm sad to see people die like that, easy, you know.
Does it make you emotional seeing this right in front of your store that you just opened up?
Yes, it makes me emotional on the personal side because it could happen to me. I walk out of my store, locking up my store, and I could be in that situation right now, got killed, you know. And also, you know, looking at the other people's situation too, yeah. But, you know, really, I'm really sad since last night. I went home like 4-something in the morning. And again, I was walking down to Royal Street and I start seeing everybody running. In my mind, I'm thinking it's a shooting, like we see that every weekend almost. But I heard after that there is a truck hit the people in Bourbon Street. So.
Well, I'm so sorry that you had to be a part of this and this happened in front of your store, and I'm sorry that it has to be closed. Just a really unfortunate situation for everyone.
Yes, very unfortunate, and I'm really sad for all these families that lost their family members, and you know, I hope we all can get together to help each other to get the situation better, especially we expecting thousands of people coming in the next months and two, you know, here. And I don't know, I hope I can help in any way I can, you know, so. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You have a good rest of your day. Stay safe, okay? Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, this is the thing. Sad situation. We keep on telling these stories of how people are being impacted this, whether it's family members that were involved or just being put into the mix of having to see this and witness some of this. It's been very traumatizing to people, and I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be needing.
This is an NBC News special report.
Good New Year's Day, everyone. I'm Kate Snow. We're coming on the air as we learn more about that deadly ramming attack in New Orleans that killed 10 people, left more than 30 injured.
I'm Morgan Radford. Just 1 hour from now, officials are set to give a news conference update, and police say that a man in a pickup truck intentionally sped down Bourbon Street in New Orleans early this morning at 3:15 a.m. local time, trying to run over as many victims, and was hell-bent, they said, on creating as much carnage as he could right as people were celebrating New Year's Day. We are told that suspect opened fire on police after crashing and shot 2 officers. In fact, take a look at this eyewitness video, which appears to show the exact moment that police approached the truck.
You hear what sounds like gunshots there. The FBI says the suspect is dead and that explosive devices were found in the area. Senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News they have now identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. They are trying to determine if he was also firing a long gun into the crowd while he was driving through the crowd. We're told the FBI is investigating all of this as an act of terrorism. Take a listen to this woman who witnessed the attack.
The guy in the pickup truck just punched the gas,
and mowed over the barricade and hit a pedicab passengers. And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos and very, very scary.
Chaos. We are hearing more chilling accounts from eyewitnesses just like that. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC's Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney, who joins us now from our D.C. bureau. Ken, we now have the suspect's name. What do we know about him, and do we know whether or not he acted alone?
Morgan, law enforcement officials are investigating that very question. They're not prepared to rule anything in or out. He's believed to be a U.S. citizen. Local officials have said he was wearing full military gear when he carried out this attack. As you mentioned, the FBI is investigating whether he fired a rifle at the crowd while he was driving and mowing people down in that pickup. We do know that the FBI and the police said he shot 2 New Orleans police officers who are in stable condition, and then he was shot by police after the truck crashed and he got out, having killed those 10 people and injured more than 30 others. Obviously, the FBI actively now investigating the motive here. One of the working hypotheses is that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. That has not been definitively established, but they are investigating whether a pole on the back of that truck with a black cloth affixed, whether that was in fact an ISIS flag. Again, no definitive answer on that, but they are looking into that, and they're looking into everything they can about this subject's background, his travel movements, his associations, his social media profile, all that to be determined, guys.
Ken, I just want to highlight one of the things you said because it is new information. You said that he is believed to be a U.S. citizen. That's what you said, correct?
That's our information. I'm hedging it a little bit, but that we have been told that by U.S. officials. That's our information.
We don't know from where. We don't know if he's local or from another state.
That's correct. I did see that local officials in New Orleans have said that he was not a local resident. Obviously, the vehicle had Texas plates, but it's not clear that he was the owner of the vehicle. FBI is still trying to sort all that out.
And again, for our viewers, we are talking about 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar. That is the identification we have currently from 3 officials with the FBI familiar with this matter. Ken, I want to go back to something else that was concerning to a lot of people. One of the data points that led officials to understand this to be a terrorist attack, and that was the potential for these homemade bombs, basically these IED devices. Do we know where that stands right now? We understand, again, from WDSU, our local affiliate there in New Orleans, that as a precautionary measure, they have had authorities now sort of scoping the area downtown around the Superdome. Do we know if they found any additional devices or what was found initially?
We do not, Morgan, and this is where the continued delays of these official briefings that we were promised really comes into play here, because you had the FBI Assistant Special Agent in charge this morning at the initial briefing on this matter tell the public that there were bombs, that there were IEDs potentially in and around that truck. But then we've heard nothing since then. And as you said, there's been reporting from local reporters that New Orleans police has been around checking suspicious packages, even conducting controlled detonations. But we don't know right now, that the authorities have not said whether there is an active threat, whether they believe there are other bombs in the city, whether there were any, in fact, in the truck, whether these were working bombs. These are all big questions. But it does suggest, if there was anything resembling an IED, it suggests this was an extremely complex attack, unlike anything we've seen before. We've seen, as we've been talking about all day, we've seen, sadly, a number of these vehicle attacks, many ISIS-inspired, both in Europe and in New York City in 2017, that have killed a number of people. But we haven't seen a combination of a vehicle attack with someone using a gun and also deploying IEDs, if in fact that's what happened, guys.
I want to note that we're talking a lot about the suspect here because we don't yet have information on the 10 people who very unfortunately lost their lives this morning. I want to just mention that we were thinking about those families, obviously.
And the dozens more injured and taken to local area
That's
hospitals.
Right. More than 30 people in a hospital. Ken, while we have you, though, what do we know about the white truck that authorities say was used in this attack? You mentioned that the white pipe with a black cloth on it. We can show that picture again. It kind of looks like a flagpole on the back of the bed of the truck. Do we know anything more about what they know about this vehicle?
I have to be a little careful here, Kate, but the working theory is that this was a rental truck. It's a white Ford F-150 with Texas plates, and they are investigating how that got in the hands of the suspect, who owned the truck, and whether the owner was the suspect or was someone else. And if it was someone else, did that person have any links to this incident, or was that person an unwitting person involved tangentially? So those are all questions the FBI is investigating, may have more information than they're willing to tell us right now. We're not reporting anything definitively about that other than that the truck had Texas plates, potentially this flag, and they're investigating its provenance.
All right, our thanks to Ken Delaney. And Ken, you know, it's interesting. We also have a lot of reactions coming in now from Louisiana members of Congress, from Representative Steve Scalise, Representative Carter, of course, Speaker Mike Johnson from the 4th District of Louisiana, most offering their thoughts and their prayers to the victims, the people who were affected by this. Ken Delaney, and thanks so much for joining us now from D.C. We do want to stay in D.C. And go to our senior White House reporter, Gabe Gutierrez, who has been following this. He's actually currently in West Palm Beach. Gabe, this is interesting. Do we have any additional reporting on the president's plans? We know that we heard from President Biden as he was boarding a plane set to go, I believe, to Camp David.
Well, while President Biden was on that tarmac, Morgan, he did say that he would have more to say on this in just a short while, presumably waiting for federal authorities to give the public that updated briefing. But yes, as you said, President Biden spent the night, rung in the new year in Wilmington, Delaware, after attending a private wedding last night. Throughout the morning, he has been continuously briefed by senior FBI and Homeland Security officials. He did speak by phone with the mayor of New Orleans, offering full federal support. And he briefly spoke with reporters as he boarded Air Force One en route to Camp David. Let's listen.
You've all got my statement. I'll have more to say in the next hour or so following what's going on in New Orleans. I'll be happy to do that.
Do you understand if the person crossed the border?
I'm not going to comment on any specific yet at all. I've contacted every agency in the federal government as well as the state. They're all coordinating to get to the bare facts. We know what the facts are.
Can you say if you're a foreigner or if you was domestic?
I'm not going to say anything until I get all the facts in front of me.
Has the suspect been identified? Has the suspect been identified?
Again, I'm not going to comment until I speak to the group later. I've spoken to every member of the agency, from the CIA to our national security team, to our FBI, NSC, and we're gathering all the, and I spent a lot of time with the government, with the mayor.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened?
Well, the reaction was one of anger and frustration. Thank you.
President Biden saying that his reaction was one of anger and frustration. And Morgan and Kate, you heard President Biden there declining to answer many questions from reporters about the origins of this suspect. Of course, the president waiting for this investigation to play out. And again, we do expect to potentially hear more from him. As he said in that brief interaction with reporters, he will be at Camp David later today. Now, also, we're here in Palm Beach County, Florida. This is where the president-elect spent the night. He rung in the new year at his Mar-a-Lago estate. We heard from for the first time from President-elect Trump also this morning on a posting on social media. He said, in part, our hearts are with all the innocent victims and their loved ones, including the brave officers of the New Orleans Police Department. The Trump administration will fully support the city of New Orleans as they investigate and recover from this act of pure evil. So again, those are the first comments from President-elect Trump, and we are waiting to see if President Biden might speak once again. So far, though, the White House says there have been no changes to his schedule, although he is continuously being briefed on the investigation after speaking with the mayor of New Orleans this morning.
Well, should he continue to make more remarks, we will certainly bring them to you live. Gabe Gutierrez reporting live there from West Palm Beach, Florida. Thank you, Gabe.
And we should probably mention that we are awaiting a press conference. It's been delayed several times. The latest we have is that it may begin about 50 minutes from now. And certainly we will bring that to you as soon as it happens. Let's get to NBC's Jesse Kirsch, who is in New Orleans for us. Jesse, I know you just arrived this morning from Atlanta, so you're outside the Superdome, where the Sugar Bowl will take place in a matter of hours tonight. That's Notre Dame versus Georgia. A lot of people in town for that game. What is security like there?
Yeah, and I want to put that game into context for people who aren't big sports fans, Kate. This is part of the college football playoffs. So these are the top teams in the country. They're competing for a chance to play in the national title game. So if you compare this to pro football, this is the playoffs, right? It's in the name. So this is going to have a lot of eyeballs watching this at home as well as in person here tonight. And so far, this game is still proceeding, and we are trying to get some clarity from officials at this press conference. One of the things to ask them is what gives them the confidence to know that their plans are solid around something like this in light of what has happened. So that's something we'll be looking at. I want to show you what the security is like out here right now. And again, we are still hours away from kickoff. So what we're seeing right now may change. But right now you can see we've got some barricades like this, which are, I don't know what exact material this is, but this is the kind of thing that you would imagine is quite solid and would hopefully hold up well against vehicles. But you also have behind that some metal fencing. But I'm going to have our producer Charlie's backpedaling with me here. We've got metal fencing here. Those kinds of barricades don't extend all the way down the block. And if he just comes over here with me, you can see behind me here, this is an open curb. And there are certainly plenty of law enforcement personnel out here. I don't know if this street's going to be blocked off. I don't know how those plans are changing in light of what has happened at this point, just pointing out what we're looking at now, and we'll be keeping an eye on how that evolves over the hours ahead. This is a game, as you mentioned, Notre Dame and Georgia. I was on a plane full of Bulldog fans coming from Atlanta this morning. So you have a lot of people who are coming in to this city tonight. So, you know, you're expanding the volume potentially of people in New Orleans right after a security incident that you would imagine is being reviewed right now and is certainly under a lot of scrutiny. And, you know, if you've been to any major event in recent years, this is going to look familiar to you. You've got the security check over here, appears to be the metal detectors that you would go through at an arena, and they've got the barricading around that. But again, this kind of harder barricading that we're seeing over here does not extend all the way down the block. And that's something that we'll be looking to see how that changes in the hours ahead. And we should also note we are less than 2 months away from the Super Bowl, of course, a global event, and that is also being hosted here in New Orleans. And so that security incident, or that security event, I should say, something that you can imagine is also going to be getting a lot of renewed scrutiny in the run-up to that. We always look at the security around a Super Bowl, especially in terms of in light of events around the globe. But you got to imagine that that's going to get more attention now because of what has unfolded in this city in the last 12 hours or so. And we have heard from the NFL. They say that the planning process around that goes on for 2 years. They've been planning that for about 2 years to ensure the safety of people who are attending that. But, you know, that's another thing that we'll be asking officials about today, is if they are prepared or they feel prepared or feel they need to make changes here in light of what has happened overnight. And again, we're not talking about an area that is a stranger to crowds. Bourbon Street is known as a place for nightlife, a place people are moving about in the street as well late at night. And so the idea that this could happen, especially on a higher profile night, is something that I think has a lot of us scratching our heads right now, myself included. Send it back to you.
Yeah, Jesse, it's interesting, you know, hearing you talk about the infrastructure, because there's also just the question of the people, right? And the psychological effect that this has really taken on that community. Because earlier, just before about 8 a.m. Eastern time, we heard Superintendent Ann Kirkpatrick basically say, look, we understand this event happened, but we also know that people are coming to the city because they're excited. They want to see the Sugar Bowl, and we are prepared to welcome them. So they were really trying to sort of calm the community's fears. But as they were saying that, we're getting more and more images coming in from eyewitnesses. I want to roll a few of those for our viewers right now, if we can, in our control room. Pull up some of the user-generated content, videos and images like this that were taken from people who were there in the moments that this unfolded, people who saw that white truck. Here you can see where we have blurred bodies that were laid on the ground. You can see where people were rushing to render aid. Other times you can see bystanders standing by who are literally stuck in place. Emergency responders trying to pull them away from staring at bodies in what appear to be a state of shock there on the ground. And so these are the types of images we're seeing now come out, Jesse. In the time that you have had, you know, to be on the plane and talk to people who were headed there for the Sugar Bowl, you mentioned the conversations you were having in the car headed to your reporting site. What are people telling you about the pall that has sort of fallen over this city, about the reaction now in these hours leading up to the Sugar Bowl?
What I can tell you, Morgan, is when I got to the airport this morning, it was filled with people wearing their Bulldog red gear for the game tonight in Atlanta. And not everyone knew what had happened here. I actually had asked someone right through security, I said, oh, did you see what had happened in New Orleans? And she had not heard the news, so I broke the news to her. And, you know, it changes, right, your perspective when you're coming to a place that's supposed to be filled with revelry, and now you've got this somberness hanging over this community as well right now. So I think it's going to be really interesting as we hear from people, as more people come to the area for the game. And actually, you can see right behind me, that's one of the Georgia team trucks. So, you know, if you've ever been to a major football game, I know college football fans are absolutely, you know, passionate about their teams and often come over to the stadiums earlier. So as we start to see people, we'll ask them what they make of this, how they feel about coming to this. And of course, there have been other, you know, incidents in the past that probably stick in people's minds when they come to major events, right? Developments over the years, like the addition of metal detector checks and barricades on what are referred to as soft targets. We talk about arenas, right, and events with people in terms of what kind of target they are now. So you know, our society has changed over the years, but it's hard to imagine when you're coming for something on the same day as all this is unfolded. And again, going back to what you said about that press conference earlier, officials were pretty adamant about the fact that things are moving forward here at that press conference. And I think one of the outstanding questions, because they did not take questions at that press conference, that we'll hopefully be able to ask of them soon, is what gives them that confidence in light of what happened overnight.
Jesse Kirsch for us. Jesse, really appreciate you being there, and we'll let you go do some more reporting. We'll check back with you. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and bring in former ATF Special Agent in Charge, Jim Cavanaugh, who joins us now. Jim, you have just been really strategic in helping us understand these types of events for years. What do we think at this hour, at this moment, is going on behind the scenes as we await this, you know, further update from officials? What is the most time-sensitive data that they're looking at right now?
The connections of the killer. That's the most sensitive, because you want to stop if there's any other attacks afoot, whether in New Orleans or even in another city. So that's the crucial facts for the commanders. You know, they've got to see if there's anything else in the planning and try to make sure they can interrupt or stop it. The crime scene will go on. That's going to be a slow process, and there's no hurry. I mean, the killer is dead, so there's not going to be a prosecution against him anyway. But there's no hurry there. They've got the resources to take care of that. Once they render any suspected IEDs safe, you know, that's a static scene. But the commanders are faced with, you know, the connections of this guy. If he is a person who's connected to foreign terrorism, we're not sure of that. They haven't said that explicitly, but there's certainly implications of that, as Ken was reporting. So we're not sure, but it seems like implications of that from all the facts we've seen. If he's a member of a foreign terrorist group or connected or inspired by one, then our intelligence agencies and the FBI, they want to get ahead of that. You know, who is he? Who works with him? Who was his confederates or co-conspirators, or who is he in touch with on the internet? Who could be launching a like-minded attack in another city or right behind him, or were any bodies left in his wake that we don't know about just yet? So that's a biggest thing on their plate for the commanders of law enforcement, but also is the security at the Sugar Bowl. And that's on their plate as well. So they are faced with making sure that that's as tight as they can be, and they're going to have on their hands a skeptical public and a skeptical traveling public that can look at the events this morning and say, you know, geez, I hope I'm going to be safe there because I've seen how this unfolded. So I think the fans will still come, and I'm sure they'll have a memorial service at the halftime or whatever and be very respectful. But fans are not, the public is not stupid. They're going to watch this closely. So the law enforcement has to be on their game here and communicate directly and responsibly with the public who's going to the game and the citizens of New Orleans and America writ large about what happened today.
Jim, you mentioned online presence of the suspect. How does that digital footprint get looked at in these early hours? How quickly can they, in this day and age, how quickly can they track someone's connections?
Well, really quickly. I mean, the FBI has a great cyber unit, and if it goes into foreign connections, we have, CIA and NSA and DIA, and even our military intelligence capabilities. We have lots of capabilities to track digital footprints. Now, these guys can use encrypted apps and encrypted websites that can somewhat slow that down. And that's been a problem. But, sometimes they're just not that slick. And, we might be able to glean some real close information from them. And if they're an actual member of a foreign terrorist group, whatever that level that means, a made guy, so to speak, or are they an inspired actor? The results are the same, agony, misery, and death. And they're trying to impress their community, which is the community of terrorists and hate mongers. They don't care about America or the public or what the world thinks of them. They only care about what their group thinks of them. And their group makes them a hero for, going in and dying in an attack like this. So we just have to see, is it really connected to a group? We just have to see. I'd say that post with the possible flag is something that's could be a real tell here. Somebody waving their motive in our face as they attack America. That's certainly possible.
Well, on that note, we thank you, Jim Kavanaugh. We do have some new reporting coming in on that exact thing. So let's bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. He's been reporting all morning on this. Tom, I see your new note, but I'll let you tell us what you know about. You're learning much more about the suspect.
We sure are, and I'm going to fold in the reporting of my colleagues Julia Ainsley and Ken Delaney in here. First off, from an investigation standpoint, there is an active effort right now to investigate a potential improvised explosive device, so a homemade explosive device in plain English, found inside that individual's vehicle. There are at least 2 other potential, again, not confirmed, potential improvised explosive devices that were planted in the area. They're trying to determine, are those actual explosives? Could they have gone off? And are they tied to this particular individual? So they're looking at that as well. It's our understanding that this person had on his person a long gun as well as potentially another weapon. And the FBI now says on the record that this 42-year-old identified as Shamsuddin Jabbar, and the FBI has now identified him publicly, says that he's a U.S. citizen from Texas, that an ISIS flag was located, and I'm quoting now, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Now, that ISIS flag that they say was located in the vehicle is believed to be affixed to the hitch on the tailgate. So if you look at this photo and you look at where the license plate is, it's a Texas license plate on the back of it, there's a white pole that kind of comes up there, and there's a black material, some sort of potentially a flag, a garment, whatever it is, that might be, in fact, the flag that was there. So that's something that they're looking at, Kate. In addition, we're told that they're looking into this vehicle and where they got it from, but there's no indication at this point that the person who rented this vehicle, which may have been through an application, so there's kind of like an Airbnb for cars, that this individual rented out the car, but may not have known this person's intentions. That's something that law enforcement will continue to look into. But again, the headlines here, the FBI now formally confirming the information that we broke several hours ago, that Shamsuddin Jabbar is in fact the person they believe is responsible for this deadly truck attack. We are told that shortly we will be, from multiple senior law enforcement officials, will hear that the death toll has risen, that this individual is a citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, and that that truck had an ISIS flag that was found in it. And that's what the FBI is investigating at this standpoint, at this hour, I should say. and that multiple special agent bomb technicians from the FBI and other local law enforcement agencies, in this particular case, it would be the Louisiana State Police, the New Orleans Police Department, but typically the Louisiana State Police has a pretty robust presence on this. They'll take a look at some other devices, which we are reporting, according to 3 law enforcement officials briefed on the matter, at least 2 other devices that were planted in the vicinity that is obviously of high interest. This really changes a bit the security picture here, because if other devices were planted where they planted elsewhere in New Orleans, and obviously we're all acutely aware of the event that is happening tonight in that city, the Sugar Bowl, and what does it mean for that event? So a lot of questions here, Kate and Morgan, but I'll kind of send it back to you for any questions you might have as we continue to do our reporting and pour through this.
Tom, first off, excellent reporting, because for our viewers who are just turning in, you gave us 4 really big new nuggets that really changed the landscape of what we've been seeing. You talked about the flag, ISIS flag. 2 potential IEDs. 3, more details from the suspect. We now know he's 42-year-old U.S.-born citizen born in Texas. And 4, you mentioned that the death toll was expected to rise. On that note, Tom, and I want to go back to that flag that we're looking at here, you know, attached to the hitch of the bed of that truck there. That was really striking to me, because I also saw when looked at that photo, those 4 holes in the windshield, the back windshield there, that appear to be, you know, gunshot bullet holes that may have entered the vehicle. When you see that flag, does that give us any indication about whether or not he was working alone, or if he had known associates? And 2, Tom, do we have any, now that we have this name, do we have any indication of whether or not he'd had previous arrests, misdemeanors, felonies, anything in his record?
That's something that we're still pouring through with respect to what is referred to in law enforcement circles as suspect pedigree. Where did they come from? What's their date of birth? Do they have any active lawsuits for or against them? Do they have any sort of criminal history? That's information that we're still in the process of going through, and we'd like to do a lot of verification to get to that point. You're seeing a video of the immediate aftermath. There were, according to a video I think that we're hopefully going to be able to show folks shortly, that's just been forwarded to me from our affiliate in New Orleans. Basically, this stops, and then there's a quick pause or 2, and then a tremendous exchange of gunfire. So the bullet holes that you're seeing on the back of that car could have come from police. They could have come from police firing from the front to the back. They could have been, it's just the picture's not clear enough, could have been shots fired from the back to the front. We are told that investigators are looking into whether or not he was firing as he was driving this vehicle, that he may have been firing a gun while driving the vehicle. That's something they're looking into. We don't have that confirmed. That's going to require, obviously, a lot of work from an evidence standpoint. Clearly, some of that probably based off of eyewitnesses. We'll see if that turns out to be true, but they're at least looking into it. This idea, by the way, of flying an ISIS flag on the back of a pickup truck is something that we've seen before. Sayfullo Saipov, back in October of 2017 on Halloween, drove down the Upper West Side Highway here in New York City and conducted a terrorist attack in the name of ISIS, killing 8, injuring over a dozen. He had talked about, according to court records, the idea of actually flying an ISIS flag from the back of his truck, coincidentally also a rented pickup truck, that from a major retailer. But he talked about doing that, but thought it would attract too much attention and that the NYPD would see that and immediately try to stop him. Obviously, that's something that would certainly grab the attention of law enforcement, frankly, anybody. That flag is kind of ubiquitous in our society. So that is something that we've seen, talked about before, and that is something, obviously, that is of interest. The idea of driving through a crowd in vehicle ramming attacks is something that we've seen over the last decade. It's talked about in almost every single major propaganda that comes out from various terrorist organizations. And as we recently reported on NBC News Now, in a story I believe we talked about, was the idea of how terrorist organizations are now using AI to produce terrorist propaganda because it allows them to be anonymous. You have the face and the voice of it being a computer somewhere instead of being an actual person, makes it more difficult for investigators to try to determine who is behind that propaganda. So This is an evolving landscape, a reminder that as we've been reporting here at NBC News for the past 9 months, the FBI has been especially concerned about the volume of terrorism investigations and attacks and thwarted attacks. There's been a number of them. The Taylor Swift concert in Austria, the FBI and the U.S. is warning to Russian security agencies about what turned out to be a deadly attack at the Crocus concert hall there. There were several other investigations, including an Election Day plot here in the United States that was disrupted, and a plot involving a relative of that suspect in France that was disrupted, as well as a number of potential incidents, not all necessarily tied to terrorism, that were thwarted before the Olympics. It's been an incredibly busy year in this landscape. It is at a tempo that we have not seen before, at least not since 2014, based on the officials that work in this space that I talked to. And so this is very real and has been a real genuine threat here, I would say, for the past year of this exact type of incident. The big question going forward is, how is it possible, knowing that all the information I just shared with you is information that was public prior to this event, how is it possible that a truck was able to drive down Bourbon Street in the early morning hours on New Year's Eve, when obviously there would be a lot of people out? There are a lot of people out in that street on a Tuesday in August, let alone at this time of the year. And as we saw here in New York City last night, it would not have been possible for this attack to take place. They fill up sanitation trucks with sand, and good luck to anybody trying to get through that. So obviously serious questions will need to be asked of New Orleans authorities. Was it an issue with overtime, and did politicians not allow that those type of protections go in? Was it a failure on the police department? Was it a combination of things, like it usually is? Time will tell.
Yeah. Tom, can I, before we let you go, can I just ask one question about the victims in all this, the people who've died, the people who are still hurt and in hospitals? Because you said when we came to you that the death toll has risen, which is the worst news we could imagine. Is this because many of the injuries are very severe and we're finding out that they're passing away at the hospital?
That's exactly right. The injuries here were horrific in nature, we're told. I don't think I need, out of respect to the victims, to get into specific details that we're being told and hearing, but we do expect the next time that we get a briefing from city officials for that death toll to rise. It's not because of any lack of extreme effort by the medical community. It's just injuries are injuries, and when you're hit with a truck at that high rate of speed, and if this idea that he was in fact firing out of the truck at that time, obviously that would have added additional problems for the people that were in that crowd. Is something that law enforcement's tracking down. It's horrific, it's horrible, and obviously is going to be continued sad news, not only for the New Orleans community, but given the fact this attracts people from all over the country, we'll have to wait and see if other communities are impacted as well.
Yeah, keeping all those families in our thoughts here, too. Tom Winter for us. Tom, thank you for all the reporting.
It is just after 1:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and this is what we know thus far about that deadly truck ramming attack in New Orleans that killed at least 10 people and left more than 30 others injured. We are learning more also right now about that suspect.
Yeah, if you're just joining us now, senior law enforcement officials tell NBC News that the suspect has been identified. He is 42-year-old Shamsud Din Jabbar, who is now deceased. The FBI just confirming moments ago that he is a U.S. citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck that appears to have been rented, and that an ISIS flag was found on that vehicle that rammed into the Bourbon Street crowd. You see it there in the picture on the back of the tailgate. The FBI says they are working to understand whether the suspect had any associations with terrorist organizations.
Now, in half an hour, officials are set to update us on the investigation at a news press conference. Police have previously said that the suspect intentionally carried out this attack and tried to run over as many victims as he could. Police saying he was hell-bent on creating carnage. We are told that he allegedly opened fire on police and shot 2 officers after he crashed into that crowd.
Police are also trying to determine if he was firing a long gun into the crowd while he was running people over. We're told the FBI is investigating this, and we've said this again and again, as an act of terrorism.
Our NBC affiliate WDSU spoke to 2 eyewitnesses who said that they saw the moment the pickup truck plowed into a crowd of pedestrians. Take a listen to what they said.
We were coming through the intersection, and it all just happened so quickly. but the guy in the pickup truck just punched the gas and mowed over the barricade and hit a pedicab passengers. And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you cannot think about, unhear that. It was chaos and very, very scary.
When you saw the car, did you think anything of it at first, or did you?
No, I mean, no. It was the most bizarre thing, like something that you, like the least expected thing, I don't even know how he managed to maneuver that with the amount of traffic and people that were still out.
Bumper to bumper. I mean, there were people everywhere.
You said there was a lot of people?
Tons of people.
Tons of people. And cops everywhere.
The cops
there
were on
were
the
cops
corner when it ran through
everywhere.
the barricade. They were standing right there when it happened.
And when you're talking about barricade, are you talking about like those, like the metal poles right there?
Was that better?
Yep.
Chilling, black man.
So did you see at all any of the ballards or anything like that pop up?
It was just like debris and everything, and then people. It was unreal. Just total chaos. Total chaos.
What was it? The sounds?
A huge impact. It almost sounded like a gunshot. I actually looked, and maybe we did hear that too, knowing now that the guy had ended up shooting those two police officers. But I remember the screeching and him gunning the car and the impact and the screams. Like I said, the screams of those girls. I mean, yeah, I don't know that I'll be able to forget that.
I'm so sorry you guys had to go through that. You had mentioned inside that when he barricaded through, it was super loud.
Yeah, it was. It was very, very loud. I mean, it just was this huge boom.
Crunching
and crunch. Yeah. And then just the people yelling.
And you guys had just walked right across the street. Where were you guys at?
We had come from about 2 blocks down from a parking garage, the Roosevelt parking garage, and we're coming through this intersection right here on Bourbon when it happened.
From what I recall, he was in this lane and just took a hard right and punched it, is what it seemed to be like. So I don't know how he did it, because there were all the cars. It was literally 3 or 4. I mean, it's 3 lane, but there was also people parked over on the side. So, I mean, it was just hectic and chaotic. I don't know how he was able to get through the barricade or whatever, get enough speed.
And there is multiple pedicab drivers and carts there. And fortunately, one of the girls that he hit her cart, she didn't have passengers, but it was the other gentleman who had passengers. That's what he hit, and they were just all on the ground. I mean,
I was just going to say, so you guys saw this happen. What did you guys do next?
It was kind of like a surreal moment, and my husband, he just grabbed me and he was like, let's go, let's go, get out, let's get out of here. It was so surreal, I think we did kind of go into that fight or flight mode and chose flight in that instance, to get ourselves out of here and safe.
Oh, just devastating to hear these accounts that we're getting. Let's bring in Tim Gallagher, former FBI special agent in charge of the Newark, New Jersey office, is with us now. Tim, the FBI got involved very early on. We heard about this, in the early mornings this morning. It's being investigated as a terror attack. What key pieces of evidence are you focused on? We've got some new reporting that I don't know if you heard from Tom Winter just a short time ago. Were you able to hear that? And can you talk about what, if you were in charge at this moment, what you'd be focused on?
Yes, thanks for having me. I heard what Tom had to say before, those key pieces of evidence. Obviously, the indicator of ISIS involvement from the flag. You can be drilling down on who has he been associated with, but, the name itself, that's the key piece of evidence here. We're looking to see, build out his network. Who is he in contact with domestically? Who is he in contact with internationally? Potentially, are there other plots afoot out there that he may have been a part of? That's job one, looking to nail down, is there anything else out there plot-wise that needs to be disrupted and disrupted immediately? Getting legal process for all of his devices, for all of his accounts, looking to see who he was communicating with, who was funding him. These are all things that the FBI is doing with their partners as we speak.
It's interesting, Tim. I'm listening to the things you're describing, and it's what, we heard Tom describe earlier as criminal pedigree, right? Sort of, we were talking about, were there any past criminal activities or misdemeanors, felonies, arrests, perhaps, in this person's profile? When you talk about the things that you collect, what is unique about what you collect from the digital footprint that is different from the physical evidence that investigators will be collecting on the scene?
Sure. Yeah. From the digital footprint of his, you're looking to see what sites has he been going to, what was he looking to purchase, was he doing surveillance online as to Bourbon Street, or was he going in person down there? Maybe his devices would tell you that his cell phone was pinging in that area a couple of weeks ago. That's one of the things that you'd be looking for. But you're drilling down to see, obviously there's surveillance done. He just didn't wake up and decide, I'm going to go go launch this attack on Bourbon Street. There was research done in advance, and how was he doing that, and how did he know that this particular spot, could be vulnerable in the situation from what we're hearing about the bollards.
Should we be paying close attention? I assume law enforcement will be paying close attention to what Tom reported about IEDs, improvised explosive devices. I think Tom said there may have been one inside the truck, and then he mentioned potentially a couple more. How would you be handling that?
Right. Yeah. It's not. It's one thing that you have IEDs. It's another thing where they were. Right. So what's in his vehicle? Obviously, that ties directly to him. But if they found other suspicious packages, which may in fact be IEDs, are you looking to pull every piece of camera footage that you can to see, where was that? When was that item left? Who left it there? Can we identify who left it there? Was it a bag? Or was it an actual potential device? Because that's a key piece of evidence here. Was it isolated to the vehicle, to the small arm fire, into that IED, or was there placement in advance? Or would there be other people? And is there a continuing danger to public safety in New Orleans as we speak?
Speaking of that public safety, Tim, the Sugar Bowl is still expected to take place tonight. We heard the superintendent basically assure people that the city was prepared for this event, still welcoming people to her city. But, from all the experience you have, if this were your family sitting there in New Orleans, preparing to go to a game like this, what would you advise? What can people take from this, and what can they do in sort of preparation for the hours that are coming, the hours ahead?
Right. Don't panic. If you see something, say something. You constantly hear that, but this is going to be one of the safest places in the planet tonight. That facility itself, the Sugar Bowl. But like when we talk about the perimeter, the outer perimeter, there could be some potential soft targets out there that if there is a continuing threat to public safety, that could be targets. So that's where, if you're out there, if you see something that doesn't look right, obviously report it to law enforcement and do so immediately.
All right. Our thanks to Tim. We appreciate your analysis and your spending your time with us on this very busy day.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
Let's bring in NBC News law enforcement analyst and former chief of police of the Seattle Police Department, Carmen Best, is with us. Carmen, we speak often, unfortunately, when there's a disaster, right? When something horrific like this happens. We were just talking with our previous guest about tonight. Given your experience as a chief of police, what is that police department in New Orleans doing right now?
Well, I have to say, Kate, that I agree with Tim wholeheartedly that it's probably going to be one of the safest venues in the city of New Orleans this evening, considering what happened over the course of the last day. There will be increased officer presence, increased vigilance at all of the stations, as many cars will be out, many police cars. They'll be working with the federal partners as well to have increased increased personnel on the street, reviewing all of their plans, making sure they reinforce any potentially softer targets, and making sure that it is absolutely as safe as possible. I know their chief and the superintendent, that is, Ann Kirkpatrick. She's a well-experienced police chief, has been through other types of significant events, and she will make sure that everyone is all hands on deck.
And what about other cities, Chief Best? I mean, what should people who are watching this, who aren't in New Orleans, who aren't from New Orleans, but who are watching this, anticipating all the other New Year's Day celebrations that are happening across the country, what should they take from this? What should they do in preparation? What should they be aware of?
Well, I can assure you, every time something like this happens, even though all the precautions are being taken in advance, when something like this happens, everyone goes over their plans again. They start maybe upping some of their resources at certain sites. They're worried about copycats and people who may try to simulate or redo an event like this. So all of that affects everyone in law enforcement, and they're asking the public, they use crowdsourcing, they ask the public to stay alert. As was said earlier, if you see something, say something. Nothing is too small or insignificant to report when we're trying to keep everyone safe.
All right, Carmen Best, really great to have your expertise with us. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Let's go now to NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, who has been following all of these developments for us from the moment that they broke. Tom, you've been working your sources. You had several updates for us just in the past hour, but specifically, I wanted to ask about those potential IEDs. You mentioned there was 2. Did you say there was a possible 3rd, perhaps located in or near that white truck allegedly belonging to the suspect?
Yeah, so our reporting on this is, one, the FBI is out with a statement saying, look, we found weapons in a possible IED in the vehicle. So what does that actually mean? So we've seen this a couple of times at incidents this year and in many other incidents in the past. Somebody might have something in their truck of fuel mixed with something else and wires coming out of it. And ultimately, when the FBI reviews it, they're like, there's no way this could have gone off, but maybe this person believed that it could have been an explosive device. On the other hand, as we saw with the Boston Marathon bombing attack, that those 2 individuals, the Tsarnaev brothers, Tamerlan and Johar Tsarnaev, they actually did have active and usable pipe bombs and other explosive devices with them that they actually used, particularly in their shootout with police officers initially from the Watertown Police Departments and then Watertown Police Department in Massachusetts, and then other law enforcement agencies. So they want to make sure there's 3 concerns. 1, first off, you don't want anybody else to get hurt. 2, you've got to find a way to render that device safe if you think it could explode. And 3, you need to find a way to actually secure the evidence. So, for instance, here in New York City, we had a couple of bombing attacks that go back several years. One was in Chelsea. There was a bombing in New Jersey at a road race, and then there was a bombing in Chelsea. There was a 3rd device that was found. And what the NYPD did is they put that inside a pressurized containment vessel. That's something that they can actually tow to the scene, and a lot of law enforcement agencies, major ones, have these. They can put whatever suspected device they think exists into that, seal it, and then take it to a facility where they can do a controlled detonation. And if it goes off along the way, it's all contained within that vehicle. But most importantly, Morgan, it's contained in the vehicle from an evidence standpoint. So it's contained within that vessel. And they have all of the parts. And so maybe there's a fingerprint, maybe there's a piece of DNA or a component, a particular component that would lead investigators along the right path. Now, in this particular instance, they're not looking for anybody because the person that they might be looking for is dead on the street in New Orleans. We've seen photographs of that. So that's not what they're looking for. But did this individual have any help? And they haven't said one way or the other whether they're looking for anybody, at least publicly at this point. So they want to see, did somebody else help make these devices? Should we be looking for another person? And then particularly in light of the security situation that you were just talking to Tim about, that's something that they would want to find out. So that's a little bit of what is going on here. You're looking at some of the video, unfortunately, of the aftermath of this incident. But that's one of the things that they're looking for. Then to further answer your question, there are at least two other potential IEDs that they're looking for. I put an asterisk on this because, as you can imagine, you're looking at the chaos that occurred after this happened. What would you do if you were there? you would drop your bag, you would just run. You want to get out of there as fast as possible. So did somebody leave behind a cooler? Did they leave behind a backpack? And they're going to have to look at those. Sometimes they go through that very quickly at great personal risk to the bomb squad of whatever city it might be in. Once you've stopped this incident, you might want to take your time. And again, it goes back to also collecting evidence. So that's what's going on there.
And Tom, just to go back to what you reported a short time ago, you reported that this is a U.S. citizen. The suspect is a U.S. citizen born in Texas. Do we have any more information about what part of Texas, where he might be from, whether he has any criminal record, anything like that?
Still going through the background of this individual, Shamsuddin Jabbar from Texas. He's 42 years old, born in late October 1982. This individual, their background, we're going through that right now. Any recent travel, that's something that federal law enforcement agencies are actively working on. We can report that, and we'll take a look into that. I want to be clear on something. It has been reported that this individual passed through a border location several days ago. We are being told that that information is not accurate, but we're continuing to do reporting on it. I just want folks to, you might be seeing something on Twitter, and then what is this guy talking about? And so I just wanted to kind of see if we could square those two things. At the moment, we're not being told that this individual had any recent southern border crossings in the last several days, but that I want to remind people that this vehicle is not a vehicle that he owns. It's owned by another person that was apparently put on an online car service where you can rent out your car, kind of like an Airbnb for cars. And so if that's the case, it's possible this vehicle did recently transit the southern border with Mexico, but it may not have been that this person, the person responsible for this attack, was inside of it. So I hope that provides a little bit of clarity. But I'll tell you that this is all very fluid and has been moving throughout the day.
No, for sure. And Tom, it might be worth mentioning that all of us at NBC News take great pride in the way that we report facts and the way that we try to verify things and explain exactly, we're transparent about what we know and what we don't know. And that's what Tom has just presented. Tom, thank you so much.
Meanwhile, as federal law enforcement investigates that New Orleans attack, President Biden is offering his condolences to the victims as well as their families. In fact, he told reporters just earlier today that he is being continually briefed. However, he is not offering any new details about the investigation at this point. NBC News White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is following everything for us from West Palm Beach, Florida, right there near Mar-a-Lago. Gabe, this is interesting because we heard from the president when, of course, reporters were sort of initially getting inklings of what was happening before we officially were reporting the suspect's name. There was lots of questions about who he was, where he was from, was in fact he a domestic? We know that now he was born in Texas. What has the president said in terms of his plans in reacting to this incident for the rest of the day?
Well, Morgan, he said that his reaction was one of anger and frustration. But what you described is something that happens in many instances like this, where that information is so fluid, as Tom was describing. The White House and the president are very cautious about what information they release early on in the investigation. They don't want to get in the way of local, state, and federal authorities. So the president declined to comment on details of the suspect's origin. He was asked repeatedly about that. But one thing that the president did say is that he would have more to say, and that he wanted to say more, but he was waiting on authorities to give out more information. So at that point, we presumably do expect to hear from him at some point later today. He started the day in Wilmington, Delaware. That's where he rung in the new year. And then he did travel to Camp David. And as we heard from the White House, he has been briefed continually throughout the day by senior FBI and Department of Homeland Security officials. Also this morning, we understand that the president did speak directly with the mayor of New Orleans and pledged full federal support. So again, the White House deferring at this point to federal, state, and local authorities. But we do expect to hear from the president at some point based on his comments to reporters at the tarmac as he boarded Air Force One. Kate Morgan.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez for us. Gabe, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Trump, as Gabe mentioned, has also been weighing in and what he's saying and what type of communication is there between the two presidents. That we're learning now as that's unfolding as we speak.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, that we find ourselves on New Year's Day of 19 days from today, right? Is the inauguration of a new president. And joining us now, NBC News national correspondent Yasmin Vasugian is with us. Yasmin, there's a lot of video circulating on social media from this morning. Can you help us understand? We've shown some of it, but help us understand what we're seeing.
Yeah, our social media team here at NBC News has been going through all this video vigorously over the last couple of hours or so, guys. And as you can imagine, right, 3 o'clock in the morning, Bourbon Street, New Orleans, the first couple of hours of 2025, a lot of folks celebrating that moment in life, looking forward to the new year, but instead catching what took place at 3 o'clock in the morning, killing 10 people, likely more, 30-plus victims here on Bourbon Street. And the video is just horrifying to see. But before we kind of go through some of this video that you're seeing on your screen now, guys, I want to take a listen to a witness account, someone who heard what was going on Bourbon Street in their hotel room. Let's take a listen to April McGee and what she had to say about the TikTok of that evening. And then we'll go through some of the video that we've been watching.
I saw lots of fireworks, and then I laid down and I was watching them from my bed, and I heard maybe they were going off for quite some time. They didn't stop at midnight, so I thought maybe it was like the final, whatever you'll call it, the grand finale. It was just loud, something really loud, and then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks.
Back, guys, I want to go back to the video you were just... So as we're hearing April there, I want to bring up the video, guys, that we were just showing before we went to April. And that was video of this individual you see approaching a dead body on the ground there. And one of the reasons why they take their camera away or their phone away from the scene to run, and you see the individual in a blue shirt running, is because you actually hear what appears to be gunshots. Now, we have heard from Tom Winter throughout the morning that they are investigating the possibility that the suspect, who is now dead, and we have now identified as a 42-year-old male U.S. citizen from Texas, had exchanged gunfire with police officers after ramming his car into individuals on Bourbon Street. I wonder if that is what we are hearing in that video there, if in fact that is gunshots. You see people kind of taking cover there. Now, when you're looking at this image here, it's of the white truck. This appears to be the truck of the suspect. You see the suspect then lying on the ground as well to the left of the truck. There is a photo, if we can bring this up, guys, from our control room, of the actual truck, the white pickup truck, with a flag in the back of the truck. You see it there. Now, we have talked about and identified, now our sources have identified the fact that this was an ISIS-inspired attack. Now, let's remind folks, this is a male U.S. citizen born here in the United States from Texas, inspired by ISIS. And Tom Winter has talked about this many times, but I think it's important to reiterate. This type of attack is certainly something that has happened before from ISIS, and is certainly par the course for actions taken by ISIS. If you remember, the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, was killed back in 2019 under the first Trump administration. But just because a leader of a terrorist organization like ISIS is killed doesn't necessarily mean you don't have people still following in the footsteps of the things they want to necessarily carry out. You're seeing here major police presence. I mean, imagine this, right? New Year's Eve, New Orleans, before the Sugar Bowl, just a couple of hours before the Sugar Bowl to take place tonight. The incredible amount of police presence already on the ground. And then now here, the aftermath of what appeared to be just a horrific attack on Bourbon Street overnight, guys, in New Orleans. And the video is continuing to pour in, really giving us a picture into the TikTok of this event. These people just celebrating. I mean, look at this video here, guys, right? An individual standing on their balcony, wanting to celebrate the first couple hours of 2025, and instead, you see the blurred images there. Those are dead bodies on the ground. Those are individuals with families, with mothers, with fathers, with sisters, with brothers, possibly with children that will no longer see the rest of this year, the rest of their life, because their life was taken last night in the first couple of hours of 2025. Just a horrific, horrific moment in this nation's history, and certainly for the city of New Orleans, when everybody should be celebrating, and in fact, instead, they are mourning.
And again, to our viewers, we just need to describe the pall that has fallen over New Orleans as people are reacting to this incident. We are still awaiting an update on those victims, dozens who were taken to local area hospitals. We do not yet know what condition those victims are in. We do know that there were 2 police officers who were shot, and they are currently in stable condition. And we are going to continue monitoring those user-generated content, those videos that are coming in from eyewitness accounts all up and down Bourbon Street and Canal, which happened at 3:15 this morning, local time. Our thanks to Yasmin Masukian.
It is 2 p.m. right now on the East Coast. It's 11 a.m. on the West Coast. I'm Kate Snow.
I'm Morgan Radford. We are continuing our coverage of the breaking news in New Orleans, a horrific, deadly truck attack now being investigated as an act of terrorism.
We are expecting an update from police and local officials in New Orleans any moment now. As soon as that happens, we will bring it to you live. Here is what we know in the meantime right now. The attack happened early this morning, just after 3 a.m., around 3 a.m., on the city's iconic Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. Police say a driver intentionally rammed his pickup truck into crowds celebrating the new year. At least 10 people are dead. We've been told to expect that there may be more fatalities, and more than 30 others are hurt. The FBI has identified the suspect as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Jabbar. He is a U.S. citizen born in Texas. The FBI says he was killed in a shootout with police.
The Bureau also says an ISIS flag and other weapons were found inside that truck. The New Orleans police superintendent says the driver was hell-bent on creating carnage. A warning to our viewers, the images we are about to show you, they are disturbing. Videos posted to social media since this morning show bodies there, blurred, laying in the street. We have blurred parts of that clip as to not further disturb our viewers. But what you are seeing are bodies laying inert, prostrate there on Bourbon Street. You can see people rushing to render aid. Others are running shortly after. There was what sounded to be gunfire, which are consistent to the reports and reporting since 3:15 this morning.
And Morgan, we just got an update, a sad update, that they now say 15 people have died in this attack. Not 10, but 15 people have lost their lives. We think of those families.
Many of whom were running into nightclubs for safety and who have described the chaos when they went back outside. Let's take a listen.
And there were just bodies and the screams. I mean, you can't think about, unhear that. It was chaos.
It just kept going. Like every eye shot, body. It was unbelievable. It was only could be referenced to a movie.
It was just loud, something really loud, and then I heard more fireworks. I don't know what it was, but apparently it wasn't fireworks. This is my first time hearing it. It'll probably be my last.
Not fireworks. Let's go ahead and bring in NBC News law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter, who has been following this, really every development since the beginning. Tom, you had several recent developments for us in the past few minutes, really. I want to specifically talk about that black ISIS flag that we now know is hitched to the bed of that truck. Does that give us any indication about whether or not this was an actor who was acting alone or whether there were known associates?
Yeah, and I think we're about to get to this press conference shortly with New Orleans officials. Actually, maybe I'll pause here as we wait to get them started, but they should be starting shortly. We have heard, according to a senior U.S. law enforcement official briefed on the investigation, that unfortunately, as you mentioned, the death toll has risen to 15. We expect an update from the FBI here that they found an apparent ISIS flag in or on this vehicle, and there's an active search for potentially additional devices in that area, and that they believe that there is a possible improvised explosive device contained within that vehicle, as well as other weapons that are found. So we do expect to get more. We do expect preliminarily the numbers can change here. If there's ever a time that I've hoped to be wrong, it's on a death toll, but we do hear that perhaps as many as 15 have died, according to people that have been briefed on this investigation. As we've been speaking throughout the day here since really early this morning on NBC News, the injuries here have been truly horrific, and that's the information that we've been hearing and the information we've been hearing from the scene.
And Tom, this press conference that we're waiting for right now, and we'll go to it as soon as they're organized and ready to go, It's been delayed a couple of hours. I wonder if you have any intelligence on what's been happening behind the scenes. I mean, is it because they've been trying to figure out what, the facts before they can meet with us?
Well, there's the facts. There's a very active and ongoing investigation. Haven't seen one this active and hot for a long time. They are deriving a lot of information, and they're continuing to track down some pretty serious leads. I think they also have had to really have a self-reflection and a serious discussion in New Orleans about the ability to host the Sugar Bowl tonight, and whether that's something, given the law enforcement drain focused on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter. You see how close this is. I've personally walked the distance from that exact address to the Superdome, and it is a very short distance. It's a big area to secure, and I think there's been some real discussions and some rumblings we've heard about whether or not this game should be postponed, just from having the amount of first responders available. You imagine, just from an EMS perspective, what they've gone through.
Tom, I want to go ahead and pause here. It looks like they are readying to have the assistant FBI agent in charge there, whom we see at the podium about to speak. Let's go ahead and just pause for one moment. Okay, wait, they're not yet organized. I believe they're going to have a few more seconds. In the meantime, Tom, I do want to go back to when you mentioned sort of the rumblings about the question of whether or not this Sugar Bowl can continue. One thing I just kept thinking about was these potential IEDs. If that's something that you have not completely ruled out, if that is something that you have not completely located, if we're talking about 2 and potentially 3, where do they stand on that? I mean, how can they sort of assure that the public is safe if they have not identified and completely flushed out the possibility of neutralizing that threat?
I would just repeat your question back to you and say that's a huge question that I would have. The other question I would have is, you have EMS workers that worked all through the night last night. Say something else happens tonight that's completely accidental. It's innocuous. There's, a car accident near the scene or another incident. We'll turn it over to this press conference.
Here in FBI New Orleans. Thank you for being here today and for your patience. First, I want to acknowledge the victims of today's horrific attack. The FBI and our partners are working diligently to investigate and find answers on behalf of the victims, the citizens and residents of Louisiana, and everyone visiting the city. I'm going to provide you some facts and information about what we do know. I know that all of you will have questions, and we will try to provide some answers, but this is an ongoing investigation that's rapidly evolving. So there are some questions I will be unable to answer at this time. The FBI is the lead investigative agency, and we're investigating this as an attack of terrorism along with our partners. Today at approximately 3:15 a.m. Central Standard Time, an individual drove a pickup truck into a crowd on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, killing at least 10 individuals and injuring dozens more. After hitting the crowd, he exited the vehicle and fired upon local law enforcement. Law enforcement returned fire, and the subject was pronounced deceased at the scene. 2 law enforcement officers were injured and transported to local hospitals. The subject has been identified as 42-year-old Samsoud Dim Jabbar, a U.S.-born citizen from Texas. He was driving a Ford pickup truck, which appears to be rented, and we are working to confirm how the subject came in possession of this vehicle. An ISIS flag was located on the trailer hitch of the vehicle, and the FBI is working to determine the subject's potential associations and affiliations with terrorist organizations. Weapons and potential improvised explosive devices, IEDs, were located in the subject's vehicle. Other potential IEDs were also located in the French Quarter. As of now, 2 IEDs have been found and rendered safe. The FBI Special Agent bomb technicians, as well as our local law enforcement partners, have been working to determine if any of these devices are viable, and they will work to render those devices safe. The FBI, we are working with our partners to investigate this as an act of terrorism. We're aggressively running down all of the leads to identify the possible subject's associates. We're working to ensure that there is no further threat. We do not believe that Jabbar was solely responsible. We are aggressively running down every lead, including those of his known associates. That's why we need the public's help. We are asking if anybody has any interactions with Samsoud Dim Jabbar in the last 72 hours, that you contact us. The FBI is asking the public's help. We're asking anyone who has information, video, or pictures to provide it to the FBI. We have set up a digital tip line as well as our 1-800 number, 1-800-CALL-FBI. Please provide us with any information that you can assist us in this investigation. Once again, thank you for your patience and assistance. For an updated statements or information, please check the FBI's website and our social media accounts. I will now turn over to Mayor Cantrell. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agent Duncan, for your leadership and the full support of the FBI. First and foremost, I want to express my deepest condolences to the families and loved ones that were impacted by this tragedy on Bourbon Street and in the heart of the city of New Orleans. And I know that the entire New Orleans City Council grieves along right with me, no doubt about that, and our people and our families. My priority will continue to be to ensure that victims that remain on Bourbon Street now will be serviced and removed as soon as possible. But as stated, the FBI is in charge of this investigation and are doing everything necessary to make this happen. I also want to acknowledge hearing from President Biden, all of our federal partners, but most importantly, calling Governor Landry this morning, responded with haste, and we do say thank you. And of course, a demonstration of a unified support is right here in this room. That's how we collectively responded to this tragedy in the city of New Orleans. The mission now is to facilitate, support, and coordinate safety procedures to keep our residents and our visitors safe. I've gone to the hospital along with Chief Kirkpatrick to visit our police officers, and considering their injuries, they're doing well. As I mentioned, this investigation is ongoing, and the FBI remains the lead in the investigation. It is an active crime scene as well. We are committed, no doubt, to uncovering all details surrounding this tragedy. And we're taking every necessary step to put even more safety procedures in place, especially given the nature of the investigation. I'm going to ask people to do not go around our secured area if there is no essential need to do so. It matters, and again, it is an active crime scene. I also want you all to know that the Greater New Orleans Foundation has set up a fund to assist victims, and that information will be provided to you. Thank you, Ganoff. Again, I want to thank this unified team. We're leaning in. We will be relentless, and we will do everything that it takes to render real justice. This team will. I want to also just thank our citizens for your heartfelt prayers. New Orleans is a world-class city, and I can say that I've heard from world leaders all this morning and up until now, in addition to my brother and sister mayors across this country. They're calling, they're responding, and they're standing with the city of New Orleans. And what they always say and want me to reiterate, they understand the resilience of this community. And we're strong in that regard, and I will say second to none. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our governor, and as I mentioned, who has not wavered any in leaning in, providing the necessary support, and standing right here with me, and I say thank you, Governor. And I know the First Lady is standing with us as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Again, I want to thank the Mayor. Since about 3:45 this morning, when she called me, we have all been working just around the clock to both secure the city and to solve